Chapter 2442. Lin Tian's speed was very fast, and it didn't take long for him to arrive at the main clan of the Immortal Court in the 6th dimension. He then learned that Wu Yi, Ji Yu, Shui Yi, and the others had returned to the 4th dimension not long after he left. Well, it just so happens that I have to return to the 4th dimension, he muttered to himself, and directly tore open the gate of heaven and earth that led to the 4th dimension. He stepped through it and left the 6th dimension. Soon after, he appeared in the 4th dimension through the gate of heaven and earth. Now, he was in a small world in the 4-dimensional world, in an empty old forest. He stood there, closed his eyes, and began to analyze the 10,000 principles. He had now comprehended and mastered the 5 types of 5th dimension laws of the 5th dimension, the 6 types of 6th dimension laws of the 6th dimension, and the 7 types of 7th dimension laws of the 7th dimension. He had mastered the 4 types of 4th dimension laws of the 4th dimension, reincarnation and destiny. The remaining ones were the space-time laws and the karma laws. At this time, he began to comprehend these 2 laws. Time passed by minute. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. He had mastered the karma laws and the space-time laws at the same time, and then imprinted these 2 laws into the 3rd dimension in his body. Good! A ray of light intertwined in his eyes. Now, except for the reincarnation laws, all the dimensional laws he had mastered had been integrated into the 3rd dimension. Although they had not yet intertwined in every corner of the 3rd dimension, it still made the 3rd dimension much stronger. He stood in place, paused, and took little Mu Chen out of the 3rd dimension. Master, where is this? Little Mu Chen was now 7 years old. He looked around and was a little puzzled. The 4th dimension. Lin Tian now then briefly explained the situation of the 7 dimensions to little Mu Chen. For a moment, little Mu Chen was a little stunned. The 7 great forces of the Blood Demon Palace, the 7 inheritances that destroyed his family and killed Elder Zhou, were no longer there. Now, the 7th dimension had fallen into the hands of the 3 ancient clans. Master! Little Mu Chen paused and said, in the future, when I return to the 7th dimension, can I deal with the 3 ancient clans and restore peace to the 7th dimension? He whispered. Our ancestors sealed them in the past. They are truly vicious, and the 7th dimension is under their control. Not good. Lin Tian paused for a moment. He didn't know if this disciple of his was too kind or too naive. He was treated so badly by the cultivation world of the 7th dimension. Previously, he thought that he could use his own life to strengthen the seal. Now that the 3 ancient clans had broken out of the seal, he thought that he would deal with the 3 ancient clans in the future and restore peace to the 7th dimension. This made Lin Tian sigh. However, even though he sighed, he was actually very gratified. After all, this showed that the little guy's temperament was really good. He was indeed worthy of being the descendant of the primordial era's sage. Sure! He rubbed the little fellow's head and said, as long as you don't do evil, Master will not disagree. Little Mu Chen nodded. Thank you, Master! Lin Tian smiled and pulled little Mu Chen to open a spatial portal. They appeared right outside of 10 Directions' ancient star. Compared to the stars around it, the 10-directional ancient star was very small, but it gave off an astonishing sense of haziness. That kind of haziness was difficult for him to understand even with his current cultivation. He paused outside the 10-directional ancient star, and then directly brought little Mu Chen into the 10-directional ancient star. Soon, they arrived outside the immortal court of the 9th heaven of 10 Directions' ancient star. Daddy! When he returned, he didn't conceal his aura. He even deliberately exuded his aura. Wu Yi, Ji Yu, Bai Qiu, and the others quickly discovered him and came out to greet him. Ruo Xian was the first to rush over. She threw herself into Lin Tian's arms. Ruo Xian was a little happy. Daddy, why are you back so soon this time? It had only been a year since Lin Tian stepped into the 7th dimension from the 6th dimension. Compared to the previous few times he left, the interval between his departure this time was indeed very short. I'm preparing to go to the 8th dimension, so I came back to see you and comprehend some dimensional laws, Lin Tian said with a smile. Ruoxian nodded. After a pause, her eyes fell on little Muchen. She blinked and asked, Daddy, this is? Wu Yi Sushu, and the others naturally saw little Muchen. At this time, their eyes fell on the little guy. Lin Tianyi smiled. This is my new disciple in the 7th dimension. This little guy is very extraordinary. He's a descendant of a sage. He introduced little Muchen to Wu Yi and the others, and then briefly introduced Wu Yi, Shui Yi, and the others to little Muchen. Little Muchen was very well behaved and knew etiquette. He immediately bowed to Wu Yi, Shui Yi, and the others. Good boy, Ruoxian said with a smile. She rubbed the little guy's head and gave him a pile of small gifts. On this day, Lin Tian returned here and chatted a lot with Wu Yi and the others. The inside of the immortal court could be said to be very warm. Then, the next day, in the depths of the immortal court, he gathered Wu Yi and the others together and practiced 6 types of 6-dimensional laws and 7 types of 7-dimensional laws for them. He was very serious, hoping that they could control these powers. At the same time, during this process, he also divided his attention to comprehend and deduce reincarnation. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Now only Wu Yi, Shui Yi, Ji Yu, Bai Qiu, Sushu, Violet Fairy, Yenye Lin Shi, Ziyu, Ai, Ruoxian, and little Muchen who he brought back from the 7th dimension were left in the 10 directions immortal court. After a year of practice, Shui Yi, Ji Yu, Bai Qiu, Sushu, Violet Fairy, Yenye Lin Shi, Ziyu, and Ai did not achieve much. Little Muchen controlled 2 types of 6-dimensional laws, while Ruoxian controlled 4 types of 6-dimensional laws. As for Wu Yi, she controlled all 6 types of 6-dimensional laws and 3 types of 7th-dimensional laws. Although she barely controlled them, she could already use them skillfully. This made Lin Tian once again sigh with emotion at Wu Yi's comprehension ability. This was really too shocking and too powerful. After that, he took another half a year to practice the 4 types of 7th-dimensional laws that Wu Yi could not control. This allowed Wu Yi to control all 7 types of 7th-dimensional laws, including the space-time and destiny laws. Only the reincarnation laws could not be controlled by Wu Yi. It was not that she could not comprehend them, but that her body could not bear the weight of reincarnation. Even if she had Lin Tian's reincarnation origin in her body, she could not do it. Mistress, you're so powerful! Little Muchen looked at Wu Yi with eyes full of worship. This kind of comprehension ability, in the 7th dimension, was definitely not comparable to anyone since ancient times. As expected of Mother! Ruoxian also spoke. Ji Yu, Shui Yi, and the others were all shocked. Although they knew that Wu Yi was very powerful, they were still shocked at this moment. Wu Yi chuckled softly. She was quiet and gentle, and the world became brighter because of this. Lin Tian did not say anything. He gave Wu Yi a thumbs up with a smile on his face. Over the past year or so, he had helped Wu Yi and the rest practice the dimensional laws while comprehending reincarnation. His results were not small, as he had already grasped 60% of reincarnation, and was not far from grasping 70% of reincarnation. Let's go for a walk in the outside world. He smiled. Wu Yi and the others naturally had no objections. On this day, he led a group of people out of the 10 directions immortal court, and went to the outside world. In fact, he did not have much time to be with his family and friends. He was about to enter the 8th dimension, and like before, he went to many places with Wu Yi and the others. Then, when he entered the 6th dimension, with Yenye's divination, he quickly found his 9 senior brothers, Bai Ziki, Yang Qi, and the others, and gathered together in the main clan of the immortal court in the 6th dimension. Desolate Heaven bloodline? She has mastered the 7th dimension Desolate Heaven law at such a young age? Really? Wuxing Crocodile looked at Lin Tian's new little disciple and could not help but show a shocked expression. Little junior brother is really amazing. Little Fox hugged Little Muchen and said. Little Muchen was now almost 9 years old, but his cultivation had already reached the Sage King realm, and he had mastered the 7th dimension. No matter how one looked at it, he was a super monster, and the group was shocked. Not bad. Even Empyrean Divine Seal spoke up. As he looked at little Mu Qin, a thick light shined in his eyes. Lin Tian chuckled. After this day of gathering, he practiced the dimensional laws for his 9 senior brothers, Bai Ziki, and the others in the 6th dimension Immortal Court. He was very serious and practiced for a full year. In a year, Feng Tianzuan and the others had mastered 2 or 3 dimensional laws. Bai Ziki, Yang Qi, Yi Feng Tian, and Little Taishu had mastered 1-dimensional law. The others were still unable to master 1-dimensional law. It's too difficult. White Tiger rolled his eyes. Dimensional laws were mostly the foundation of a large world, the strongest force, and it was really difficult for ordinary people to master. Lin Tiantan smiled. In this year, he was still comprehending and deducing reincarnation, and now he had mastered 70% of reincarnation. Moreover, after such a long time, even if he did not take the initiative to cultivate, his cultivation had reached the middle stage of the 7th dimension. You can really improve your cultivation while sleeping. Wishing Crocodile rolled his eyes. Now that Lin Tian had broken the 7 seals on his soul root, it was really too abnormal. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. This time, he spent a long time with his family and friends. On this day, Lin Tian was ready to go to the 8th dimension. You said that the 7th dimension is now very chaotic, and the 3 big fierce ancient clans are there, and the strongest are only silent soul realm experts. Before you go to the 8th dimension, send us there to gain experience. Real battles are also very necessary. Feng Tianzuan said. Master, disciple will also go back to the 7th dimension. Little Mukin also said. Lin Tian thought about it and did not refuse. On this day, he directly tore open the gate of heaven and earth to the 7th dimension and took his 9 senior brothers, Little Mukin, Yi Tong, Little Fox, Bai Ziki, and the others to enter the 7th dimension. Senior brothers, you must pay attention to your safety. He looked at his 9 senior brothers and the others and said. Now, in the group, the strongest cultivation was in the 6th dimension. With this cultivation, going to the 7th dimension to gain experience was not too dangerous. Even so, he was still a little worried. After all, these people were very important to him. Chapter 2443. Don't worry, we understand, Feng Tianzuan said, then looked at Lin Tian. You too. Safety first. Daddy, be careful, Ruoxian said. Wu Yi Jiu and the other girls also said. They had also come to the 7th dimension and wanted to gain experience here. Lin Tian nodded and looked at Wu Yi. I'll leave them to you. Wu Yi was now in the 6th dimensional realm and had mastered all the dimensional laws from the 4th dimensional realm to the 7th dimensional realm, except for the reincarnation cycle. Even an ordinary silent void realm cultivator would not be able to withstand a single blow from Wu Yi. Okay. Wu Yi nodded gently. Lin Tian said a few words to Wu Yi and said goodbye to everyone again. He directly tore open the gate of heaven and earth to the 8th dimension. Now that he was in the middle of the 7th dimension, it was naturally very easy for him to open the gate of heaven and earth to the 8th dimension. After waving goodbye to everyone, he stepped into the gate of heaven and earth to the 8th dimension and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The tunnel of heaven and earth was dark and oppressive, and the flow of time seemed very blurry. Inside the tunnel of heaven and earth, Lin Tian waited silently. After an unknown amount of time, light appeared in front of him. There were irregular intertwining forces in the tunnel of heaven and earth, which shook him out and stepped on solid ground again. Almost at the same time, a scream came from about 10 feet away, accompanied by the cry of a young girl. Lin Tian tilted his head and looked. About 10 feet away, a young girl was riding on a strange beast covered in snow-white fur and with a pair of snow-white wings on its back. A boy was beside her. Xinglu. His gaze fell on the strange beast, and his expression changed slightly. Xinglu was an extremely rare auspicious beast. It was rare to see one even in thousands of years, and he never thought that he would see one here. "Who is it? How dare you frighten the holy knight of my miss and my master?" Next to Xinglu, the boy shouted and stared coldly at Lin Tian. He was about 6 years old. Lin Tian looked at the boy and vaguely remembered that when he first fell out of the tunnel of heaven and earth, he heard the cry of the beast and the girl's scream. The boy seemed to have scolded him because of this. "Sorry, the gate of space set itself here. I didn't mean to disturb you," he apologized, and then turned and walked into the distance. When he landed in this place, he already felt that the saint spirit chi in the air was shockingly dense, far from the 7th dimension. This place was the 8th dimension. Clang! A sharp sword light slashed over, bringing with it strands of demonic chi. It landed beside Lin Tian's feet and split the ground. Lin Tian stopped and tilted his head to look at the boy. The sword light came from the boy. "Xinglu?" He Xinglu. "Xinglu, Xinglu, 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 Xinglu. Xinglu teat. Xinglu, Xinglu. Xinglu is the holy knight of my master, and we will ascend the 9th dimension together." Looking at Lin Tian, he said coldly, "Now, destroy your own cultivation, and this matter will be over. Otherwise, you will die here." The girl sat on Xinglu and looked indifferently. She didn't say anything, but there was a trace of arrogance in her expression. Lin Tian looked at the boy, glanced at him indifferently, and continued to walk into the distance. "You're courting death." The boy had red lips and white teeth, but his attacks were extremely ruthless. He took a step forward and instantly came in front of Lin Tian, directly grabbing the top of Lin Tian's head. His 5 fingers were as sharp as immortal swords, and his aura was cold and gloomy. "Don't look for trouble," Lin Tian said coldly, slapping out with a flip of his hand. This was an immortal forest, a land of freedom. He was jolted out of the tunnel of heaven and earth and landed here. The strange beast Xinglu and that young girl were frightened because of his sudden appearance. This was not his fault. It was completely fine even if he did not apologize. However, he still apologized. However, this boy was relentless and aggressive. Just because of this small matter that wasn't entirely his fault, after he apologized, he wanted him to cripple his own cultivation. After he ignored this, he actually directly grabbed at the top of his head, clearly wanting to kill him. It was truly sinister and cruel. Bang! He swung his hand and met the boy's attack. With a bang, the boy was blasted away and staggered back a dozen steps. "You!" The boy was moved, and his face turned even colder. The girl on Xinglu's back was also astonished. She was well aware of how powerful her elder brother's boy was. He was transformed from a ferocious beast that had been suppressed in a demonic mountain. Although his cultivation was only at the peak of the 7th dimension, his physical strength was extremely terrifying. In terms of physical strength, even some Alpha Origin experts were far from his match. However, in this place, the boy had been blasted away by a single palm strike from Lin Tian, an intermediate 7th dimension human cultivator. Lin Tian then swept an indifferent glance at the boy and continued to walk away. The boy's face twisted, and a cold light burst out. His body directly expanded, transforming into a giant beast that was 100 feet tall. His eyes were red and green, and his claws were sharp. With a low roar, boundless demonic chi surged as he clawed at Lin Tian's head. "Die!" Cold words came out of his mouth, extremely sinister. Wherever the beast's paw passed, the surrounding space would be forcefully distorted and then collapse in pieces. Lin Tian raised his hand, grabbed the other party's claws, and twisted them. With a crack, the other party's claws were shattered on the spot. He was suppressed and forced back into his boy form. "Let go! If Master knows, you won't have a good death!" the boy roared, staring coldly at Lin Tian. It was very sinister, and the killing intent in his eyes was very strong. Lin Tian's face darkened, and he no longer showed mercy. He raised his leg and kicked. Accompanied by boundless saint power, he directly sent the other party flying. With a poof, the person's physical body collapsed as he was sent flying, and the spirit in his knowledge sea also collapsed. You! On Xinglu's back, the girl was shocked and angry. You dare to kill my brother's servant? How dare you? Under her, Xinglu felt her anger. With a low roar, boundless saint power surged and directly pressed down on Lin Tian. Its body was snow-white and surrounded by Saint Qi, but at this time, its eyes were full of fierceness, like a murderous beast. It raised its claws, and Saint Light gathered. It was full of murderous intent, as if it wanted to kill Lin Tian. The auspicious beast has become a great ominous beast? Lin Tianling said, showing no mercy. The divine sword in his hand, which was condensed with the desolate heaven law, directly slashed down. Poof! Blood splattered. The auspicious beast, Xinglu, was at the Alpha Origin realm, but it could not block this sword and was directly beheaded. His divine soul was also shattered. With a bang, the auspicious beast's body fell to the ground, and the girl was thrown out. Bright red blood with traces of gold constantly flowed out from Xinglu's body. You killed my brother Saint Knight? You! How dare you do that? This is my brother Saint Knight! It's an auspicious beast! The girl was extremely shocked and angry. This was an auspicious beast that her brother had subdued in Xianbai Sacred Mountain, and its value was immeasurable. This time, it was specially sent back with the boy to bring her to an ancient land, but she did not expect that it would be killed by Lin Tian here. You didn't kill it and let it kill me? Lin Tiantan said indifferently. He would never show mercy to people or demons who wanted to kill him, regardless of their origin or whether they were auspicious beasts or not. You! The girl glared at Lin Tian, wanting to say something, but facing Lin Tiantan's indifferent eyes, she did not dare to say anything. The boy was at the end of the seven-dimensional realm, and was killed. The auspicious beast, Xinglu, was at the Alpha Origin realm and was also killed by Lin Tianyi. As for herself, she was only at the early stage of the seven-dimensional realm. So, how could she dare to continue to contradict Lin Tian? At this time, she did not even dare to show the slightest hostility or killing intent, afraid that Lin Tiansha would kill her. Lin Tian looked at her, swept an indifferent glance, and walked away. This girl was definitely hostile to him, but since she did not make a move, he naturally would not kill her. He walked into the distance, his steps calm and steady. The girl watched Lin Tian leave until Lin Tian was far away and disappeared from her sight. Only then did she breathe a sigh of relief. Damn it! Brother will not let you off! She gritted her teeth and walked in another direction, quickly leaving this place. After leaving the previous place, Lin Tian had already walked far away. Everywhere he passed, there were magnificent celestial mountains, one after another, and the Holy Spirit Qi in the air was at least 1,000 times stronger than in the seven-dimensional world. He could not help but be moved by this, and once again thought of the difference between the dimensions of each world. Living in such an extremely dense Holy Spirit Qi space, the living beings of this world had a much higher starting point than the living beings of the lower worlds. Take the seven-dimensional world for example. In the seven-dimensional world, the difficulty of reaching the seven-dimensional realm was comparable to ascending the heavens. However, in the eight-dimensional world, it was definitely not a difficult thing. He walked in this world, passing by celestial mountains, looking for places with relatively dense Holy Spirit Qi. After the seven-dimensional realm, the Alpha Origin realm, the Breaking Desolation realm, the Tribulation realm, the eight-dimensional realm. He muttered to himself. This time, I will probably be able to unlock the eighth seal on my soul root when I reach the Breaking Desolation realm. Now, he was in the middle stage of the seven-dimensional realm, not far from the Breaking Desolation realm. He planned to find a place with dense Holy Spirit Qi in this world to cultivate, and raise his cultivation base to the Breaking Desolation realm as soon as possible. Then, he would unlock the eighth seal on his soul root to reach the eight-dimensional realm as soon as possible, and from there, enter the nine-dimensional world. Entering the nine-dimensional world was his current biggest goal. His master, master's wife, and father and mother were all in the nine-dimensional world. He walked through the celestial mountains and ancient forests, using the dragon burial scripture and the seven-dimensional earth law to explore the layout of the world to determine where the Holy Spirit Qi and the Tao of heaven and earth were the densest. Soon, he arrived in the eight-dimensional world. About 3 days had passed. Boom! On this day, a dazzling beam of light suddenly shot up from the distance. It was extremely dazzling, and extremely shocking Saint spiritual Qi interweaved within it. It evolved into a series of miraculous phenomena of the heavens and the earth, as if a super-divine domain had opened. Lin Tian was still very far away from that direction, but he could still see the glaring light beam. He could feel the dense Saint Spirit Qi that surged along with the light beam. He could also see the blurry heaven and earth phenomenon. He was immediately moved. Not a bad place. Chapter 2444. The beam of light in the sky was too dazzling and blazing. It was accompanied by a shocking amount of Saint spiritual Qi and various heavenly wonders. Lin Tian did not need to think too much to know that that place was definitely a very shocking place. He was certain that the Saint spiritual Qi was extremely dense. Other than that, there might even be some very amazing divine items there. After all, those heavenly wonders did not seem like they were formed by pure Saint spiritual Qi. They were probably formed by other amazing treasures and immortal treasures. Immediately, without any hesitation, he headed in that direction. Soon, he discovered that many other cultivators were heading in the same direction as him. Duan Muki's auspicious beast was actually killed by someone. That person is too bold, isn't he? When he was young, he fell into a demon's den but did not die. He obtained the inheritance of a heaven and earth sovereign. Then, at a young age, he stepped into the limits of the eighth dimension and mastered 3 types of eighth dimension laws. Now, even the top orthodoxies are incomparably fearful of him. That unknown person dared to kill Duan Muki's auspicious beast. What was he thinking? Is there something wrong with his brain? Duan Muqi seems to be dealing with some other matters now and can't do anything himself. However, he has spread the word that whoever can subdue that person and send him to him will owe him a favor. Now, some of the patriarchs of the top orthodoxies are very concerned about this matter. It seems that some of them have come out from their clans. In front of him, a group of cultivators were discussing. Lin Tian's eyes moved slightly. A few days ago, he had killed a ferocious beast and an auspicious beast. He heard the name, Duan Muqi, from the ferocious beast. Now that he heard these cultivators, he instantly understood. In the end, it was the young girl who told Duan Muqi about that matter. After that, it became known to the entire 8th maintenance world. You can't get away from your own matters, so you spread the word that the entire 8th maintenance world will subdue me? That's quite impressive. He sneered. At the same time, he was somewhat surprised by Duan Muki's strength. He had actually reached the peak of the 8th dimension and controlled 3 types of 8th dimension laws at the same time. In the entire 8th dimension, there was probably no one who could compare to him. However, although he was a little surprised, he did not care much. Origin Seal, Tao Transforming, Heaven Suppressing, Grand Yen, Void, 8 Extremities, Inner Demon, Connecting Saint. The 8-dimensional laws of the 8-dimensional world were the Origin Seal Law, the Tao Transformation Law, the Heaven Suppression Law, the Dian Law, the Void Law, the 8 Extremities Law, the Mind Magic Law, and the Sage Law. Mastering the first 3 of them would be heaven-defying and divine to others, but to the current him, it was as easy as drinking water. There was nothing to be concerned about. Now, only the comprehension of reincarnation was difficult for him. The other aspects of cultivation were really too simple. The 9th dimension has been cut off for so many years. Speaking of which, what is the reason? Why can't we ascend? Who knows? It has nothing to do with us. In any case, only those who have reached the 8th dimensional realm have the qualifications to enter the 9th dimension. With our strength, it is impossible for us to reach the 8th dimensional realm. There is no need to think about it. That is the problem of those 8th dimensional realm experts. Let those old fogies of the 8th dimensional realm worry about it. Well, the words are crude, but the reason is not. Now, those 8th-dimensional realm experts have placed their hopes on Duanmuchi. Duanmuchi has obtained the inheritance of the Supremes of heaven and earth. In the future, Duanmuchi may be able to find a special method to reach the 9th dimension from the 8th dimension. That Duanmuchi does have the strength and the hope. It is also because of this that his influence is so great. Those 8th-dimensional ancestors of the top inheritances are all very concerned about him. Therefore, the person who killed Duanmuchi's auspicious beast is really bold. How dare he kill Duanmuchi's auspicious beast? In front of him, a group of cultivators was talking as they walked. Soon, they had walked far away. Lin Tian's expression changed, and he could not help but stop in his tracks. The 9th dimension has been cut off? Should he ascend or not? How could there be such a thing? Immediately, he took a step forward. His speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he caught up with the group of people who were talking. Fellow Taoists, I have a question. Can you tell me more about the matter of the 9th dimension being cut off? He asked. Isn't this something that everyone knows? Why are you? The group of cultivators felt that Lin Tian's question was a little strange, but when they saw Lin Tian's appearance, their expressions changed, and they all widened their eyes. It's you! During this time, Lin Tian's appearance had spread throughout the entire 8th dimension, so these cultivators naturally recognized him. You, we didn't do anything to you. We were just talking about you. Don't do anything rash. This group of cultivators had cultivations ranging from the early stage to the peak of the 7th dimension, but the auspicious beast that Lin Tian killed was at the alpha origin stage. These people naturally knew that they were no match for Lin Tian. Therefore, when Lin Tian appeared at this time, they did not think of suppressing Lin Tian and handing him over to Duanmuchi so that Duanmuchi would owe them a favor. They simply did not have the strength to do so. They were now worried about their personal safety, afraid that Lin Tian would attack them. This was because they had previously discussed Lin Tian, and some even said that Lin Tian had lost his mind. At this time, they were quite anxious. No. Lin Tian shook his head and said, I just want to ask about the 9th dimension being cut off. These cultivators had already heard Lin Tian mention the matter of the 9th dimension being cut off. At this time, when they heard Lin Tian mention it again and really confirmed that he was not going to harm them, one by one, they relaxed a little. Immediately, one of them quickly informed Lin Tian of many things, and then the group hurriedly bid farewell and left. For a time, only Lin Tian was left in the same place, his brows deeply furrowed. According to the cultivators from before, under the 9th dimension, cultivators who had reached the 8th dimension could tear open the gate of heaven and earth that led to the 9th dimension and step into the 9th dimension to cultivate. However, many years ago, the 9th dimension was suddenly shrouded and cut off by an extremely powerful force. In the 8th dimension, even if experts who had reached the 8th dimension could tear open the gate of heaven and earth, after stepping into the gate of heaven and earth, they could not enter the 9th dimension and could only helplessly retreat. How could this be? He frowned. The 9th dimension was cut off by a powerful force, and the cultivators of the lower worlds could no longer step into the 9th dimension? What was going on? For a time, he paused in place, looking extremely puzzled. Soon after, a bright light flashed in his eyes. First reach the 8th dimension. With his current cultivation, he still did not have the ability to tear open the gate of heaven and earth that led to the 9th dimension. Therefore, he could not sense the specific situation of the 9th dimension being cut off. The information he could get from listening to others talking about it was very limited. Once he reached the 8th dimension and tore open the heaven and earth gate that connected to the 9th dimension, he would be able to sense the majestic power that separated the 9th dimension and analyze it himself. At that time, he would be able to get more precise information about it. Thinking of this, he immediately rushed towards the place where the light beam came from and rushed over at an even faster speed. Soon, 3 days had passed, and he arrived at the place where the blazing light beam came from. As far as the eye could see, there was a vast ocean in front of them. At the center of it, a blazing beam of light shot horizontally towards the heavens. All kinds of strange phenomena lingered around it. The holy spiritual chi was extremely astonishing, and groups of cultivators were rushing towards it. Splash! 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 The sound of water splashing could be heard from time to time. One after another, cultivators rushed towards the place where the blazing light beam came from and disappeared into the ocean. When Lin Tian arrived, he did not hesitate and immediately rushed towards the place where the light beam came from in the middle of the ocean. Nearby, many cultivators were rushing in that direction together. Some of them suddenly saw him and were immediately moved. "It's you!" One of them was a bald middle-aged man. When he saw Lin Tian, he immediately made a move and grabbed at Lin Tian with his Saint Spirit Chi. For a time, the pressure of the barren stage was vast and mighty, surging violently. Almost at the same time, many other cultivators nearby also saw Lin Tian, and their expressions all changed. "It's the man who killed Duan Muki's auspicious beast." Not long ago, Lin Tian Sha had killed Duan Muki's auspicious beast, and this was already known to the 8th dimension. At this moment, when they saw Lin Tian appear in this place, it immediately caused the cultivators to be moved. Then, after the bald middle-aged man, some other powerhouses also made a move, suppressing Lin Tian from every corner. Duan Muki had received the inheritance of the sovereign of heaven and earth. At a young age, he had already reached the peak of the 8th dimension and had mastered 3 types of 8th dimension laws at the same time. Now, he was already the most powerful person in the 8th dimension. Rumor had it that he was the most likely to break through the severed 9th dimension, and his influence in the 8th dimension was extremely great. Suppressing Lin Tian and sending him to Duan Muki in exchange for a favor was a great temptation to anyone, and the patriarchs of the top orthodoxies were no exception. Rumble! Majestic Saint Spirit Chi surged, and those who made a move were all in the barren stage. In the blink of an eye, all the space around Lin Tian was sealed, not giving Lin Tian any chance to retreat. Looking at these people, Lin Tian naturally knew what they were thinking at this moment, and he knew their purpose. In his body, the 3-dimensional force of heaven and earth condensed and gathered into the sword of heaven and earth in his hand, and he directly slashed out with it. Clang! The sound of the sword was ear-piercing, and it turned into a sword blade storm, shattering all the incoming attacks. Then, the swift and fierce momentum of the sword did not diminish, and it continued to sweep out. In the blink of an eye, a series of muffled bangs rang out, and all the people who made a move were swept away, splattering blood everywhere. This? He's only in the 7th dimension. How, that sword in his hand, that is. Chapter 2445. Near the ocean, the cultivators were all stunned. From the previous rumors, these cultivators knew that Lin Tian had the battle prowess to kill a grand initial stage expert. After all, the auspicious beast that Duan Muqi had killed was at the alpha origin stage. But now, seeing Lin Tian himself, and seeing that Lin Tian was only at the middle 7th dimensional realm, and that he was able to sweep away dozens of breaking desolate stage experts with a single strike, the crowd's heart palpitated even more. The breaking desolate stage was the cultivation level above the alpha origin stage. Lin Tian was able to send a group of breaking desolate stage experts flying with a simple sword strike even though there was a gap of 2 major realms between them. This was simply too shocking. His battle strength was too terrifying. Of course, at the same time, these cultivators more or less understood why Lin Tian was able to do such a thing so easily. It has something to do with the sword in his hand. That sword, could it be a tribulation treasure weapon? This seems very likely. Some cultivators discussed. Blood splashed in the air, and the group of breaking desolate stage experts who had attacked Lin Tian steadied themselves. They couldn't help but be moved. They were all breaking desolate stage experts, while Lin Tian was only at the 7th dimensional realm. His cultivation was obviously much higher than Lin Tian's, but now, he was easily injured by Lin Tian. It's mainly because of the sword in his hand, one of them said. Let's attack together. After suppressing him, we will share the benefits equally, another person said. Duan Muqi was very concerned about his auspicious beast, and only he and his sister could ride it. Now, he had announced that whoever could suppress Lin Tian and bring him to the 8th dimensional realm would owe the other party a favor, and within a certain range, they could agree to one thing. After suppressing Lin Tian together, they could ask Duan Muqi for a heaven-shaking treasure technique. At that time, they could cultivate it together. One had to know that Duan Muqi had obtained the inheritance of an ancient paragon of heaven and earth. All of the techniques he had mastered were earth-shattering. Even the 8th dimensional realm ancestors of the top orthodoxies would covet those techniques. Okay. Attack! At that moment, the group of people nodded one after another and agreed to this suggestion. Then, they cooperated with each other and pressed toward Lin Tian at the same time. There were 76 people in total, and all of them were at the Breaking Barren realm. At this moment, they were all attacking together. They were all looking at the worldly sword in Lin Tian's hand. As far as they knew, this sword was the only thing that could threaten them. Rumble! The 76 people attacked together. For a moment, the same power was majestic, vast, and intimidating, as if it was going to crush the sky. Lin Tian looked at these people indifferently. Previously, he had already shown mercy to these cultivators. The slash of his sword had only forced them to retreat. However, he did not expect these people to be unrepentant and charge at him again. Clang! The sword of heaven and earth in his hand let out an ear-piercing screech. This time, he no longer held back, and the power of the 3 dimensions of heaven and earth boiled. With a slash of the sword, the sky was filled with sharp sword lights. They turned into a rain of swords and slashed toward the dozens of people. In an instant, the saint-powered divine arts cast by the dozens of people were all shattered. Then, the rain of swords came down mercilessly. Puff! 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 The blood mist exploded one by one, interweaving into blood-red buds above the sea. The 76 people were all destroyed in the blink of an eye. None of them survived. The surrounding cultivators immediately trembled violently. Many people felt a chill on their backs, and their divine souls trembled slightly. One slash, just one slash, and more than 70 Breaking Barren realm cultivators were killed. He was being merciful with that strike? That sword. I'm afraid it's a peak level 1000 calamity precious weapon. Absolutely. Otherwise, with his cultivation in the middle stage of the 7th dimension, how could he do such a thing? Many cultivators were frightened. The blood mist lingered in the void. Lin Tian tilted his head and glanced at the surrounding people. Who wants to come again? He said coldly. As soon as these words came out, the surrounding cultivators suddenly trembled. Many of them met his gaze and stepped back. What a joke. He killed dozens of Breaking Barren realm cultivators with a casual slash. Among them, there were people who were at the peak of the Breaking Barren realm. With such combat strength, who would dare to fight him except for those above the Calamity realm? That would be courting death. Lin Tian glanced at these people, put away the sword of heaven and earth, and stepped forward, disappearing into the sea. This person is really, where did he find such a terrifying precious weapon? It's really terrifying. Right now, there are no Tribulation Realm experts here yet. But in the near future, there will definitely be Tribulation Realm experts appearing. At that time, Qin Wentian would be in grave danger. Even if he has that sword, it's impossible for him to win against a Tribulation Realm expert. After all, the difference in cultivation base is too great. It's not something that can be compensated for by artifacts. That's right. Let's not care about that. Anyway, we're just nobodies in the 7th dimension. The matter between that person and Duan Muqi has nothing to do with us. Let's hurry down to the sea. Maybe we'll be lucky enough to get a few super treasures. That makes sense. Let's go. The group of cultivators chatted casually, and also went down into the sea. At the same time, in the distant sky, more cultivators rushed over, and one by one they went down into the sea. The sea was vast, and the inside was dark and deep. Lin Tian went into the sea, and a faint saint power surrounded his body, naturally isolating him from the surrounding seawater. The light beam pierced through the bottom of the sea, and gradually dissipated. He went all the way down, and soon, a transparent light screen appeared in his field of vision. The area covered by the light screen was very wide. He looked inside and saw that there was a group of celestial mountains. At the center there was a large number of palaces. Although some of the palaces had collapsed, most of them were still standing. They were surrounded by an extremely shocking aura of time. This made his eyes twitch. It seemed like this was the place of an extremely ancient inheritance. He paused, and came close to the light screen, and stepped into it. The light screen couldn't stop him. Nature barrier. He muttered to himself. This nature barrier wasn't very powerful, and it could isolate the nearby seawater. However, for powerful cultivators, it was nothing. Normally, ordinary Great Dao cultivators could easily pass through it. There were already groups of cultivators inside the light screen. Obviously, they had stepped into it before and were searching for something in the group of celestial mountains. Back then, the number 1 inheritance in the 8th dimension, the sky-raising gate, disappeared without a trace overnight. I didn't expect it to be here, submerged under this sea. I really can't figure it out. How did it appear here? Why do you care so much? Look for treasures. Back then, the number 1 inheritance in the 8th dimension, the celestial treasures inside. Clang! Some cultivators were discussing as they walked in the group of celestial palaces. However, in the next moment, someone seemed to have touched something. Killing patterns instantly intertwined in the vicinity, and a killing light suddenly burst out, shattering all the nearby space. Ah! Screams immediately sounded, and it was horrifying and mournful. Then, in an instant, the group of cultivators walking in that direction all collapsed, and their bodies and souls were destroyed. This is? There are killing patterns that can be activated by touching them? What's going on? Some of the other cultivators walking in the group of celestial palaces saw this scene and couldn't help but be shocked. Lin Tian, who had just passed through the nature barrier, also saw this scene. At the same time, he also heard the discussions of those cultivators. His eyes flashed, and his gaze flickered. At first glance, he guessed that this was once the place where an inheritance was established. He didn't expect it to be the case. Moreover, it was the number 1 inheritance in the 8th dimension. As for the killing patterns that those cultivators had touched before, he also saw many things. It was an 8th dimension killing array, which should be the protective killing array of this inheritance. Originally, this kind of killing array required a special ancient seal to be activated, but now, it seemed that some changes had occurred. As long as one came into contact with some of the special killing patterns of the killing array, it would directly trigger the nearby killing patterns to manifest and erupt with a terrifying 8-dimensional killing force. Moreover, he saw that these killing patterns belonged to the peak of the 8th dimension. Obviously, they were engraved by the peak 8th dimension powerhouse in the Sky Pillar sect. In an instant, he had a simple understanding of this place. The number 1 inheritance in the 8th dimension, there were many treasures and ancient scriptures inside. At the same time, the protective killing array of this inheritance had mutated, which had become a fatal threat here. A super treasure trove, but anyone who steps into it under the 8th dimension may face death at any time. He muttered to himself. Once the mutated peak 8th dimension killing array was touched, it would be disastrous for cultivators below the 8th dimension. He saw this, but he didn't care. He directly stepped into the group of celestial palaces. In the group of celestial palaces, the Saint Spirit Chi was so dense that it was frightening. As soon as he stepped in, the pores all over his body naturally vibrated, causing the Saint Spirit Chi in the surroundings to naturally surge into his body, flowing to every corner of his body. He didn't care too much about this. Instead, he immediately operated the Dragon Burial Scripture and the 7th Dimension's Law of Earth at the same time to explore the group of celestial palaces here, looking for the various secret treasures inside. This was the place where the number 1 inheritance in the 8th dimension was established. There were definitely many ancient treasures inside. Using the Dragon Burial Scripture and the Law of Earth to explore the group of celestial palaces, at the same time, the Divine One Soul tactic was also operating, naturally avoiding the many killing patterns. Moreover, he secretly imprinted his soul power into these killing patterns with the Divine One Soul tactic. Now, in this group of celestial palaces, the Sky Pillar Sect's 8th dimension killing array had mutated. Without the special ancient seal to activate it, it was already ownerless. Under such circumstances, with the Divine One Soul tactic combined with his powerful strength, he wanted to try to bring the killing patterns here into his control. This was absolutely beneficial to him. In such a place, he naturally had to make use of all the powerful forces that could be brought in. Chapter 2446. Weapon Repository? Lin Tian's eyes involuntarily twitched as he sensed the powerful aura within the treasure repository. Such a powerful aura was clearly emitted by a weapon. He immediately stepped into the treasure repository without any hesitation. Clang! Suddenly, an ear-piercing sword cry rang out as a beam of sword light slashed straight towards him, piercing through space. Lin Tian frowned as he retreated to avoid the attack. The sword light whizzed past his ears and smashed a nearby palace into pieces. "Your reaction is not bad!" A cold voice rang out as a middle-aged man appeared in the distance. His eyes were cold as he stepped into the treasure repository and pressed forward again. Clang! Sword cries rang out as the pressure of a Tribulation Realm expert interweaved around his body. Swathes of sword light once again pressed towards Lin Tian. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed slightly as he dodged to the side. This was a Tribulation Realm expert. Even if he had the support of the three-dimensional world, it would still be difficult for him to resist with his current seven-dimensional cultivation. Sword cries rang out incessantly, echoing continuously. In the surroundings, one palace after another was slashed into pieces, causing sand and dust to fly up into the air. "That is? The sect master of the Wind Flame Sword sect is here!" There were quite a few cultivators in the Immortal Palace group. The battle here had naturally been witnessed by many, causing their gazes to look over. One after another, they recognized the Tribulation Realm middle-aged man. As for Lin Tian, the cultivators who had entered at the beginning had naturally already seen him and recognized that Lin Tian was the one who had killed Duanmu Chirue. However, because the strongest was only at the Alpha Origin stage, no one dared to make a move. Clang! Sword light flashed, bringing with it scorching heat and fierce wind, causing the surrounding space to distort inch by inch with cracking noises. Lin Tian executed the Samsara steps, swiftly dodging the Wind Flame Sect Master's attacks, leaving behind afterimages. "You're pretty good at jumping," the Sect Master of the Wind Flame Sect said coldly. His attacks were even more ferocious and his attacks were even faster. His gaze was fixed on Lin Tian. Duan Muki had said that if he suppressed Lin Tian, he would owe him a favor. Within a certain range, Lin Tian was undoubtedly a moving treasure trove in the eyes of the cultivators of the 8th world of cultivators. At this moment, Duan Muki's attacks were increasing in intensity. He wanted to suppress Lin Tian in the shortest amount of time possible in exchange for Duan Muki's favor. Lin Tian used the Reincarnation Divine Domain to protect his body and used the Reincarnation Step to increase his speed, dodging the sharp sword lights. "Sect Master of the Wind Flame Sword Sect, your Wind Flame Sword Sect will soon completely disappear from the 8th dimension," he said calmly. From the discussions of the cultivators here, he had already learned of the middle-aged man's background. The Wind Flame Sword Sect Master was disdainful. "Soon, my Wind Flame Sword Sect will completely disappear? You mean you'll take revenge later?" Looking at Lin Tian, he sneered. "Do you think you can escape from my hands? Do you still have a chance to take revenge?" As soon as he finished speaking, another sharp sword light slashed toward Lin Tian. The speed of the sword was even faster. Lin Tian's expression did not change. He stepped back and formed a seal alone. Boom! Suddenly, the void beside him boiled. Killing runes intertwined one after another, and the peerless killing power was instantly vast and mighty. Chi! 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 The Wind Flame Sect Master's sharp sword light that was pressing down was completely crushed in an instant. This is? The Wind Flame Sword Sect Master's expression changed slightly. Lin Tian's expression did not change. With a thought, the killing runes that appeared vibrated, and an even more shocking killing light intertwined. The killing light of the killing runes surged, and a glaring cold light burst out, striking toward the Wind Flame Sword Sect Master. Previously, when he first stepped into this group of immortal palaces, he had used the One Heaven Soul mantra to imprint his soul power into some of the 8th dimension killing runes in this group of immortal palaces. Now, a large number of killing runes in this area were under his control. At this time, he directly awakened these killing runes, and a sharp killing light burst out, attacking the Wind Flame Sword Sect Master. Pfft! Blood splattered. In the blink of an eye, the Wind Flame Sword Sect Master was hit, and his body was immediately shattered. Such a scene caused the nearby cultivators to be visibly moved. That killing runes. When did he carve them? No. It doesn't seem like he did it. It seems to be the killing runes in this group of immortal palaces. Someone touched it before, and it's exactly the same as the killing runes back then. That means he mobilized the killing runes in this group of immortal palaces? The protective killing runes of the sky-bearing sect? How did he do it? Many cultivators were shocked. At the same time, the sound of flesh squirming was heard. The Wind Flame Sword Sect Master's body reformed, and he looked at Lin Tian in shock and anger. You boom! The sect leader of the Wind Flame Sword Sect had only spat out a single word when the killing runes around him flared up once again. Under Lin Tian's thought, waves of killing glows interweaved and hacked towards him. This was an 8-dimensional killing rune. Although the Wind Flame Sword Sect Master was not weak, he could not block it at all. With a pft sound, the Wind Flame Sword Sect Master was directly chopped into pieces again, leaving only his soul intact. Damn it! The Wind Flame Sword Sect Master cursed. He did not even have time to reform his body. He used his soul to wrap around his flesh and bones and quickly retreated. No matter what, he did not expect Lin Tian to be able to mobilize such a killing rune. He could not block it at all. Lin Tian did not chase after him. Under his thought, the killing runes boiled, and a blinding killing light appeared and struck toward the Wind Flame Sword Sect Master. In the blink of an eye, the killing light swept toward the Wind Flame Sword Sect Master, sealing all the space around him. The Wind Flame Sword Sect Master trembled, and he could not even dodge. His soul trembled violently, and his eyes were filled with fear. Stop! Pfft! The killing light swept past, interrupting his words, and directly shattering his soul. In an instant, the place became dead silent. Many cultivators could not help but shiver. The Wind Flame Sword Sect Master, a Tribulation Realm cultivator, was killed by Lin Tian, a mid-7-dimensional realm cultivator. Lin Tian did not care about this. He did not look at the other cultivators here, and once again stepped in front of the treasure pavilion. With a squeak, he pushed open the door of the treasure pavilion. Immediately, the sound of clanging rang out incessantly. Dazzling lights shot out from the pavilion of treasures with extreme sharpness. Inside, there were densely packed treasure weapons. Sabers, swords, halberds, shields, cauldrons, and so on. There should be an end to all kinds of saint weapons. Among them, there were nearly 100 Tribulation Realm treasure weapons. There were more than 10,000 Desolation Realm and Grand Primary treasure weapons. As for the other levels of treasure weapons, it was even harder to count. Lin Tian's eyes could not help but intertwine with a sharp light. This was indeed the treasure pavilion. Moreover, there were a lot of treasure weapons, and their grades were not low. The overall value was extremely shocking. He nodded inwardly. With a wave of his hand, saint light intertwined, and the treasure weapons were absorbed into his body one by one, and into the 3-dimensional world. Nearby, the other cultivators looked on, their eyes filled with excitement, and many of them clenched their fists. There were so many treasure weapons. It was a super treasure. However, at this time, no one dared to go up and fight for it. After all, a Tribulation Realm cultivator was killed by Lin Tian. At this time, in this place, no one dared to provoke Lin Tian. The treasure weapons clanged. Soon, all the treasure weapons in the treasure pavilion were absorbed into Lin Tian's three-dimensional world. Not bad, Lin Tian said to himself. Then, he left and walked towards the other places in the Immortal Palace group. Around him, the cultivators looked at his back. Many of them had fear in their eyes, and some even shrunk their necks. A Tribulation Realm cultivator was killed by Lin Tian so easily. This made the cultivators' hearts palpitate. Although it was because Lin Tian used the killing runes here to attack, it was still very scary. After all, to be able to use a killing formation that did not belong to him to kill the enemy, this in itself showed that Lin Tian was not ordinary. It was strange and terrifying. Lin Tian felt the eyes of the crowd on him, but he did not care at all. He walked in the Immortal Palace group, using the Dragon Burial scripture and the seven-dimensional law of Earth to explore, and went to various places in the Immortal Palace group. It wasn't long before he found the branch's sacred medicine pavilion. Inside, many heavenly materials and earthly treasures were laid out. Because they were protected by special saint runes, the spiritual energy of these heavenly materials and earthly treasures did not leak at all. They emitted a very rich fragrance, causing his eyes to shine. There were many amazing heavenly treasures among them, which were very useful to him now. At that moment, he waved his hand and put away all the heavenly treasures. He roughly estimated that if he absorbed and refined these heavenly treasures, he would definitely be able to step into the breaking barren realm. It could be said that this was a great harvest. Boom! Not far away, Saint energy surged. A sacred medicine pavilion was discovered. There were many mystical Baoden inside, which caused a group of cultivators to fight over it. Hundreds of people fought fiercely, and blood splattered everywhere. In other places, other fights broke out. Someone found a herb garden with many heavenly treasures growing in it. Lin Tian walked in and looked at the place where hundreds of cultivators were fighting. His gaze fell on the Baodan. Some of the Baodan were very valuable. At that moment, he made a move. The four-dimensional space-time law manifested, stirring up space and time, forming a space-time vortex that sucked the Baodan into it. Then, it fell into his hand and was put away by him. Among these Baodan, there were many Baodan that could allow a cultivator to directly step into the early Alpha Origin realm from the peak of the seventh-dimensional realm. Moreover, some other Baodan were also very useful for strengthening one's Tao foundation, warming one's spirit, and tempering one's order. He used the space-time law to take away most of the Baodan in the sacred medicine pavilion. Including the treasure weapons and heavenly treasures from before, his harvest could be said to be extremely rich so far. He couldn't help but nod to himself, and he was very satisfied with this. With the rich harvest of this trip, he could quickly step into the breaking barren realm, then unlock the eighth seal on his spirit root and step into the tribulation realm. After that, he would advance to the eighth dimensional realm. It was estimated that this process would not take too long. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying saint aura shook, and a giant hand of light appeared in the distance, pressing straight towards him. Chapter 2447. Lin Tian was the first to react. He used the samsara steps and dodged at an extremely fast speed. Humph! A cold snort sounded, and the pressure of an eighth-dimensional expert descended once again. An old man with fiery red hair and deep eyes appeared. It was as if there was a boundless galaxy contained within them. Qianshan family's old ancestor. Within the immortal palaces, a large number of cultivators looked over and recognized the red-haired old man. Almost at the same time, the same level of pressure appeared from two other directions. Two old men shrouded in holy light appeared and pressed down on Lin Tian. Northern Cold Palace's Grand Palace Master! Immeasurable Ancient Pavilion's old ancestor! Some cultivators exclaimed. They recognized these two old men. Just like the Qianshan family's old ancestor, they were famous eighth-dimensional experts in the eighth dimension. In an instant, the three eighth-dimensional experts attacked together. The surrounding space distorted, and the eighth-dimensional aura was extremely frightening. Lin Tian used the samsara steps and supported the samsara divine domain as well as the three-dimensional energy of heaven and earth to protect his body. He quickly retreated. At the same time, he willed it, and a rumbling sound could be heard. All of the killing runes in the area had been awakened, and were now under his control. At this moment, a monstrous killing light erupted, and the aura of an eighth-dimensional expert surged out. Qian Shan coldly snorted and smashed down with his palm, shattering a large amount of killing light. At the same time, the Northern Cold Palace's Grand Palace Master and the immeasurable ancient pavilion's old ancestor also crushed a large amount of killing light in the blink of an eye. Lin Tian frowned. The three-dimensional energy of heaven and earth condensed into a sword of heaven and earth and slashed towards the three. Then, he retreated even faster. The eighth-dimensional killing runes here were very powerful, but in the end, they were still unable to do anything to an eighth-dimensional expert. After all, he had only controlled a portion of the killing runes and had yet to fully control the sect-protecting killing formation within the heaven-raising gate. "You think you can escape?" the Grand Palace Lord of the North Cold Palace said. Cold air gushed out from the sky, freezing the space and the land. At the same time, this person was also on guard against Ancestor Qian Shan and the immeasurable ancient pavilion's ancestor. After all, their goal now was to suppress Lin Tian in exchange for Duan Muqi's favor. However, there was only one Lin Tian. Whoever snatched the Lin Tian would get Duan Muqi's favor. The ancestor of the Qian Shan family and the ancestor of the immeasurable ancient pavilion were also wary of each other. Their attacks were exceptionally fierce. The three eighth-dimensional auras almost crushed Lin Tian on the spot. Lin Tian used all of his techniques to defend himself, but it didn't have much of an effect. He kept retreating, dodging the attacks of the three great cultivators. Right now, his cultivation base was only at the middle stage of the seventh dimension, so it was impossible for him to fight against an eighth-dimensional expert. Being able to rely on the eighth-dimensional killing runes and the third-dimension force of heaven and earth to avoid being suppressed by the three of them for a short period of time was already extremely astonishing. Most people at his level would not even be able to resist the aura of an eighth-dimensional expert. 3 eighth-dimensional giants were actually unable to suppress him in an instant? The nearby cultivators felt their hearts palpitate. Facing 3 eighth-dimensional experts with the cultivation base at the middle stage of the 7th dimension, and being able to last for so long, this was simply too shocking. Even the ancestor of the Qianshan family, the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, and the Sect Master of the Immeasurable Ancient Pavilion were shocked. Although they were still on guard against each other and were far from using their full strength, they were still eighth-dimensional experts. However, Lin Tian was actually able to withstand their attacks with a cultivation base at the middle stage of the 7th dimension. Immediately, the three of them began to increase their attacks while remaining vigilant against the other two, causing the pressure to become even denser. Lin Tian's brows furrowed even deeper. As the attacks of the three increased, the pressure on him skyrocketed. Although he was still not suppressed by the three of them, intense pain was already rising all over his body. Even his soul body was no exception. It seemed like it would disintegrate at any moment. Rumble! Suddenly, in this place, the immortal palaces trembled. On the ground, streak after streak of large cracks appeared, extending in all directions like a spiderweb. An extremely terrifying wave of demonic energy suddenly rushed out from underground, rushing into the heavens. With a chi sound, the natural barrier surrounding the group of immortal palaces was directly penetrated. Roar! A beast-like roar came from the ground as an incomparably tall and sturdy middle-aged man stepped out. His face was full of demonic runes, and his eyes were scarlet red. The aura he emitted was extremely terrifying, and the pressure of a peak eighth-dimensional expert spread out in all directions. Hurricanes intertwined as the tall and sturdy middle-aged man once again let out a beast-like roar. The sound waves were filled with killing intent, and together with the soaring demonic aura and the pillar of spiritual energy, the natural barrier surrounding the group of immortal palaces was completely destroyed. In an instant, the surging water from the outside gushed in and submerged the group of immortal palaces in the blink of an eye. Such an unforeseen event caused the expressions of everyone present to change. The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace and the other two eighth-dimensional experts also changed their expressions and temporarily stopped attacking Lin Tian. Their gazes fell on the tall and sturdy middle-aged man who was covered in demonic aura. Sky Pillar Ancestor! The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace was shocked, and his pupils couldn't help but constrict. Ancestor Qian Shan and the ancestor of the immeasurable ancient pavilion were also shocked. Just like the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, they also recognized the tall and sturdy middle-aged man. The Sky Pillar Ancestor was the most powerful existence of the Sky Pillar sect in the past. He was only half a step away from the primordial realm in the eighth dimension. They had all seen him with their own eyes. At that time, they were only young cultivators. A long time ago, the Sky Pillar sect disappeared without a trace. The fact that its ruins were discovered here already surprised the three of them, but they didn't expect to see the Sky Pillar Ancestor at this time. At the same time, the other cultivators in this place also changed their expressions. Although they had not seen the great ancestor with their own eyes like the Grand Palace Master of the North Cold Palace, they had read about him in ancient books and knew his appearance. At this time, they naturally recognized him immediately. All of them could not help but change their expressions and tremble violently. The Sky Pillar Ancestor was the most powerful person in the eighth dimension. Lin Tian was also shocked. The aura that the Sky Pillar Ancestor was emitting at this time was too frightening. The Grand Palace Master and the other two couldn't compare at all. The surging water surged in, and the cultivators all raised a barrier of light to isolate the water. Roar! The Sky Pillar Ancestor roared again like a wild beast. With a roar, a vast demonic light surged and turned into a black vortex of demonic light. It directly sucked in a large number of cultivators, and they were all crushed into pieces. Even their blood and divine souls were directly absorbed into the Sky Pillar Ancestor's body and were directly devoured. Roar! He was like a wild beast, and his mouth was full of blood as he roared towards the sky. Rumbling sounds could be heard as the water in the depths of the sea was pushed away by his aura. Then, the demonic light vortex intertwined and sucked in the nearby cultivators, devouring their flesh and divine souls. Immediately, the other cultivators were frightened. They all moved and quickly fled into the distance. At this time, the Sky Pillar Ancestor was somewhat terrifying. There was no difference between him and a bloodthirsty demon. The Sky Pillar Ancestor's face was full of demonic runes, and his eyes were blood-red. He suddenly stared at the Grand Palace Master of the North Winter Palace, the ancestor of the Qianshan family, and the ancestor of the immeasurable ancient pavilion. As if he felt the majestic soul power of the three people, he immediately rushed over. Roar! A beast-like roar was heard, and it shook the surroundings. The Grand Palace Master of the North Winter Palace and the other two were immediately shocked. They each supported a majestic saint power and faced the Sky Pillar Ancestor who was closing in. They recognized the other party, but they didn't speak at this time because the Sky Pillar Ancestor had obviously lost his self-awareness. Words wouldn't work. Only martial arts would work. Lin Tian was standing in the distance. His right reincarnation eye flashed and disappeared in a flash. His gaze couldn't help but flicker slightly. He briefly opened his reincarnation eye and saw that there were countless souls in the Sky Pillar Ancestor's body, including the cultivators who had been devoured by the Sky Pillar Ancestor. These souls were roaring in the Sky Pillar Ancestor's body like vengeful spirits. Back then, the other cultivators of the Sky Pillar sect were all devoured by him? His eyes narrowed slightly. In the Sky Pillar Ancestor's body, apart from the cultivators who had been devoured by the Sky Pillar Ancestor, the rest were most likely the disciples of the Sky Pillar sect. Rumble! Saint energy trembled as the Sky Pillar Ancestor pounced toward the Grand Palace Master of the North Winter Palace, the Grand Ancestor of the Thousand Shan family, and the Grand Ancestor of the immeasurable ancient pavilion. Demonic chi surged out, and the aura of a peak 8th dimensional expert was vast and mighty. Waves of demonic chi storms forced the three of them into a somewhat sorry state. Lin Tian looked at this scene from afar, paused for a moment, and immediately retreated. Now, the appearance of the Sky Pillar ancestor had temporarily restrained the three Grand Palace Masters of the North Winter Palace. He naturally had to take advantage of this rare opportunity to leave and get rid of the three 8th dimensional experts. The Grand Palace Master of the North Winter Palace, the Grand Ancestor of the Thousand Shan family, and the Grand Ancestor of the Immeasurable Ancient Pavilion naturally noticed that Lin Tian was retreating. They wanted to grab Lin Tian, but in the face of the Sky Pillar ancestor, who was surrounded by demonic chi, they were unable to free their hands to grab Lin Tian. They could only watch as Lin Tian escaped into the distance. Damn it! The three of them were shocked and angry. Roar! The Sky Pillar ancestor's face was covered with demonic runes, and his body was covered with demonic light. Boundless demonic chi swept toward the three of them at the same time, as if he wanted to devour them. Lin Tian looked back and increased his speed. In the blink of an eye, he was already far away. Not long after, he stepped out of the ocean and used the reincarnation steps. In the blink of an eye, he was far away from the ocean. About 6 hours later, the sky became dark, and the stars and the moon intertwined. He entered an incomparably desolate mountain range, and used his saint energy to dig out a cave. He engraved dozens of sealing runes around it, and then sat down cross-legged in the cave. The Thousand Shan family, the North Winter Palace, the Immeasurable Ancient Pavilion, and Duanmu Chi. He sneered, slightly adjusted his breathing, and took out some of the heavenly treasures, spirit pills, and saint medicines that he had obtained from the bottom of the ocean. He then operated the Reincarnation Sutra and directly began to refine them in this place. Immediately, his essence, chi, spirit, and cultivation increased bit by bit. Chapter 2448. The number of heavenly treasures and sacred Baodan obtained from the bottom of the ocean was quite large, and their value was astonishing. In the desolate mountain range, Lin Tian operated the Reincarnation Heart Sutra to refine some of the heavenly treasures and sacred Baodan. His essence, chi, and spirit rapidly increased, and his cultivation base also rapidly rose from the middle of the 7th dimension to the peak of the 7th dimension. At the same time, as he operated the Reincarnation Heart Sutra, the spiritual power between heaven and earth also surged together. Suddenly, the speed of his essence, chi, spirit, and cultivation base increased a little. Buzz! 9-colored holy light lingered on the surface of his body, dyeing the nearby space with a layer of 9 colors. Time passed little by little. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Half a month later, with a dong sound, the heavens of this place exploded. An enormous thundercloud vortex appeared. Pitch-black lightning interweaved within, crackling as if black dragons of destruction were wreaking havoc. Lin Tian opened his eyes and looked at the sky. He put away the heavenly treasures that he had not finished refining and stepped out of the cave. In half a month, he had reached the Alpha Origin stage from the 7th dimension and attracted the Alpha Origin heavenly tribulation. Come! Facing the lightning in the sky, he calmly said. At the same time, he summoned the reincarnation sword from his body and went through the tribulation with him. This place was very desolate. Except for him, there were no other living creatures. Transcending the tribulation here would not affect him at all. With a rumble, almost as soon as his voice faded, the first round of the main lightning tribulation struck down. After that, the lightning punishment continued to fall, and the sound of thunder continued to explode. It was not until half a day later that the lightning punishment finally dissipated. The sky regained its clarity, and a rainbow-colored auspicious cloud appeared. This was a gift from the heavenly tribulation. Lin Tian used it to temper his flesh and blood, stabilize his cultivation base, and also to reconstruct the reincarnation sword. Soon, the 7-colored auspicious clouds dissipated, and he steadily stayed at the initial stage of the Alpha Origin stage. He could clearly feel his current strength. He was much stronger than half a month ago, and he could now kill a desolate stage expert with his own strength alone. In this place, the desolate mountain range had become extremely dilapidated because of the heavenly tribulation. He glanced around and directly left. Not long after, he found another barren mountain without any living creatures. He continued to refine the treasures he had obtained from the bottom of the ocean, as well as some special bowed and, so that his cultivation could reach the breaking barren realm. Buzz! Holy light shrouded his body, and his essence, chi, spirit, and cultivation all increased bit by bit. At the same time, he diverted a portion of his attention to comprehend the 8 laws of the 8-dimensional sky. The 8th dimension, the outside world. The person who killed Duanmuchire is too amazing. He actually managed to escape unscathed from the hands of 3 8th-dimensional realm experts. It is indeed terrifying. Oh, I don't know where that person ran off to now. Many great figures are searching for his tracks. In the 8th maintenance world, the news of what happened at the bottom of the ocean spread. Many cultivators in various places of the cultivation world were discussing it. Some of the matters of the Sky Pillar sect were also spread, causing everyone to be shocked. Who would have thought that the Sky Pillar sect, which had mysteriously disappeared overnight, would actually be at the bottom of the ocean? How did it get there? Also, the Sky Pillar sect's patriarch actually became demonic and lost himself. The other disciples of the Sky Pillar sect all disappeared. It's really strange. Back then, there was a rumor that the Sky Pillar sect had obtained a very extraordinary ancient artifact that was intertwined with a shocking demonic nature. Now, it seems that the Sky Pillar sect's disappearance without a trace after the Sky Pillar sect's patriarch became demonic. Could it be related to that ancient artifact? Oh, it's very likely. Now that the Sky Pillar sect's patriarch has become demonic and has crazily devoured living creatures everywhere, many cultivators have already suffered. We must be careful. If we encounter him, we will be completely finished. Now, the only person who can deal with the demonic Sky Pillar sect's patriarch is Duanmuchi. Previously, it was said that the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, the immeasurable ancient pavilion's patriarch, and the Qianshan family's patriarch were almost devoured by the Sky Pillar sect's patriarch. We can only wait for Duanmuchi to come out of seclusion and end the Sky Pillar sect's patriarch as soon as possible. He is already a true demon. Many cultivators discussed, occasionally trembling. The Sky Pillar sect's patriarch was really terrifying after becoming demonic. 8th maintenance boundary, in a barren mountain. Buzz. Strands of 9-colored holy light revolved around Lin Tian's body. Compared to before, it was even more resplendent. Some extraordinary natural treasures were placed beside him. He used them to cultivate, and his cultivation base steadily increased. Just like that, a month passed in the blink of an eye. A month later. On this day, his cultivation base rose from the alpha origin stage to the breaking desolate stage, causing the sky to shake violently. A breaking desolate stage heavenly tribulation appeared, and thunder rumbled. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. He stood up, and a faint light flashed in his eyes. Dong! The sky exploded, and the thunder rumbled. He summoned the reincarnation sword and waited for the main lightning punishment to descend. His entire person seemed very calm. Then, after 3 breaths, another shocking thunder rumbled. The first round of the main lightning punishment descended mightily. Then, the lightning punishment continued to descend. It was not until half a day later that the lightning punishment of the breaking desolate stage dissipated. A rainbow-colored auspicious cloud appeared and floated above his head. Rainbow-colored rays of light cascaded down. He used the rays of light to stabilize his cultivation base and refine his body. It was not until half an hour later that the 7-colored auspicious cloud dissipated. At this time, his cultivation base was still at the early stage of the breaking desolate stage, and his essence, chi, and spirit were extremely strong. Next, he glanced at the barren mountain that had been destroyed by the heavenly lightning, put away the reincarnation sword, and directly left. Now that he had stepped into the breaking desolate stage, he could unlock the 8th seal on his soul root. But before that, he had to go to a place where the saint spirit chi and the way of heaven and earth were very rich. This was because every time he unlocked the seal on his soul root, it would attract the spiritual power and way of heaven and earth within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles to help him improve his essence, chi, spirit, and realm. Therefore, it was naturally very good to choose a place where the saint spirit chi and the way of heaven and earth were relatively rich. In fact, he had already made up his mind to go to such a place, so he chose to go to the Qianshan family. A few days ago, the ancestor of the Qianshan family treated him like that, so he naturally would not let it go. It was excellent to go to the Qianshan family at this time to unlock the 8th seal on his soul root. Not only could he get back at them, but it would also be very beneficial for him to unlock the 8th seal on his soul root. After all, the Qianshan family was one of the 8 top orthodoxies in the 8-dimensional heaven. The foundation of the family was absolutely amazing, and there were many heaven and earth treasures, immortal pills, and sacred medicines in the family. If he unlocked the 8th seal on his soul root in the Qianshan family, the foundation and heaven and earth treasures of the family would be at his disposal. As for his combat strength, he was not worried at all. Now that his cultivation had stepped into the breaking desolate stage, coupled with the 3-dimensional world in his body, he could kill 8-dimensional experts. The Qianshan family was no longer a threat to him. Soon, he walked out of the range of the barren mountain and found some ordinary cultivators on a road. "Excuse me, where is the Qianshan family established?" he stepped forward and asked. The strongest in this group of cultivators was only at the initial stage of the alpha origin stage. He suddenly stepped forward, scaring the group of cultivators. "I mean no harm, may I ask where the Qianshan world is?" he asked again. The group of cultivators were all frightened. Someone quickly spoke and told him where the Qianshan family was established. "Thank you." He simply thanked them and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then, about 3 days later, he came to a group of immortal mountains. The Holy Spirit Chi in the immortal mountain range was extremely dense. At the center of the immortal mountain range, there were many immortal palaces, floating islands, and some extraordinary immortal birds flying in the sky. It was the Qianshan family. When he came here, he did not hesitate and directly went to the immortal mountains. Soon, he arrived outside the Qianshan family. Outside the Qianshan family, there were many guards in front of the main gate. After seeing his true appearance, each and every one of them changed color. "It's you," one of them said to the other guards. "Quick! Go and inform the family master that the person who killed Duanmuchire has broken into our family." As this person's words fell, someone immediately rushed into the Qianshan family to report to the higher-ups of the family. Lin Tian did not care. His pace did not change as he walked towards the Qianshan family. Outside the Qianshan family, a group of guards pointed the long hairs in their hands at Lin Tian and kept retreating into the family. After all, these people's cultivation was only at the initial alpha origin stage, and they did not think they could stop Lin Tian. Lin Tian's pace did not change, and he soon stepped into the Qianshan family. As soon as he stepped into the Qianshan family, he felt that the saint spirit Qi inside was extremely rich and astonishing. "How dare you?" a cold voice sounded. The family master and some supreme elders of the Qianshan family had received the report and stepped out one after another. Everyone's eyes fell on Lin Tian, their gazes sharp. Their Qianshan family was one of the top orthodoxies in the 8th dimension. Yet Lin Tian dared to barge into their family. He was too arrogant, and it made them feel a chill in their hearts. However, Duanmuchi wanted Lin Tian. If they suppressed Lin Tian, Duanmuchi would owe them a favor. Lin Tian was a moving treasure. Now that Lin Tian had stepped into their Qianshan family and delivered himself to their door, many people's eyes involuntarily lit up. "Take him down!" The family master of the Qianshan family waved his hand and ordered coldly. Immediately, dozens of attendants of the breaking desolate stage acted together, each summoning a powerful magical ability to suppress Lin Tian. Lin Tian's expression was indifferent. Strands of special ancient seals intertwined around his body, and a sacred and terrifying aura lingered around him. Chi, chi, chi. The dozens of breaking desolation realm deacons who were rushing over were instantly crushed. Then, the ancient imprints continued to move and landed on the dozens of deacons' bodies. Pu. Those dozens of deacons' bodies and souls were all destroyed. All of a sudden, everyone in the Qianshan family was moved. Origin seal law? The family master's expression changed drastically, and he could not help but exclaim. Chapter 2449. You! Everyone in the Qianshan family, including the head of the Qianshan family, recognized the ancient seals that Lin Tian had used. It was clearly one of the eight-dimensional laws of the eighth-dimensional sky, the legendary Origin Seal Law. This law could summon the Origin Seal of heaven and earth. Its aura was sacred, but it also had the power to destroy everything. You! How did you? All the cultivators in the Qianshan family were shocked. Lin Tian had mastered the Origin Seal Law. Lin Tian didn't care about these people's reactions. His gaze fell on the depths of the Qianshan family. In the past month, while he was diligently cultivating, he was also comprehending the eighth-dimensional laws of the eighth-dimensional sky. Now, he had already mastered the Origin Seal Law, Tao Transformation Law, and Heaven Suppression Law of the eighth-dimensional laws. Looking at the depths of the Qianshan family, he raised his hand and directly slashed with his sword. Clang! The sharp sword light slashed straight towards that direction, shattering a pagoda there. With a whoosh, an old man stepped out. His expression immediately changed, and his gaze fell on Lin Tian. It's you! This was the patriarch of the Qianshan family. Some time ago, he was seriously injured by ancestor Qin Tian and had been in seclusion to heal his injuries. When Lin Tian broke in, no one in the family had reported it. At this time, Lin Tian's sword had shattered the ancient pagoda, forcing him to step out of seclusion. When he saw Lin Tian, his eyes were filled with shock. Lin Tian had broken into the Qianshan family at this time. How have you been? Lin Tian looked at the man and said calmly. Ancestor Qianshan's eyes turned cold. He immediately stepped forward and said coldly, Stupid thing, you broke into the Qianshan family of your own accord. He couldn't understand why Lin Tian had taken the initiative to break into the Qianshan family. Wasn't this courting death? However, although he didn't understand, at this time, he didn't care too much about this matter. He directly raised his hand, and the pressure of the eighth dimensional was vast and mighty. He directly grabbed at Lin Tian. You escaped last time. Let's see how you can escape this time. In the blink of an eye, the great palm of light pressed down on Lin Tian, completely sealing off the space around Lin Tian. Lin Tian's expression was calm as he condensed the three-dimensional heaven and earth sword in his hand. Combined with the Origin Seal laws, he casually swung his sword. With a clang, this sword had a terrifying sword aura. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through the void and shattered the other party's giant palm of light. Then, the sword light's momentum did not decrease, and it carried the power of Origin Seal laws as it directly approached the other party. You poo! Blood splashed out as ancestor Qianshan was immediately pierced through. Patriarch! Within the Qianshan family head, the great elders of this branch, and other experts all paled. Although their patriarch was injured because of Patriarch Qin Tian, he was still an eighth-dimensional realm expert. But now, his chest was pierced through by Lin Tian with a casual swing of his sword. Ancestor Qianshan stabilized his body and looked at Lin Tian with shock and anger. In just an instant, he sensed a lot of things. Lin Tian's cultivation had actually reached the breaking barren realm from the middle of the seventh dimension. Moreover, Lin Tian had used the power of Origin Seal laws. How do you feel? Lin Tian looked at Ancestor Qianshan and said calmly. Ancestor Qianshan's face suddenly turned cold. Although Lin Tian's voice was calm, it was full of sarcasm. Man, he growled, and the pressure of the eighth dimension was vast and mighty. His battle strength was directly pushed to the peak. He took a step forward and pressed down on Lin Tian again. The surrounding space was directly suppressed by his power. Lin Tian was still calm. The sword of heaven and earth in his hand, combined with the eighth-dimensional origin seal laws, slashed again. With a puff, Ancestor Qian Shan was once again pierced through, and his whole body flew out tens of thousands of feet away. Along the way, dozens of treasure pavilions and immortal palaces were directly smashed by his body. Within the Qianshan clan, the expressions of the experts changed again. Just now, their clan's ancestor had used all his strength, but he was still easily injured by Lin Tian. How could this be? The experts of this clan were all in disbelief. They could feel that Lin Tian had just broken through the barren realm. How could he injure their eighth dimension ancestor twice in a row? There was still a tribulation realm between them. Boom! In the distant sky, Ancestor Qianshan rushed up, and the injuries on his body quickly healed. When he looked at Lin Tian again, his eyes were full of shock and anger. There was still a tribulation realm between him and Lin Tian. How could Lin Tian injure him twice? Then, in the next moment, his gaze fell on the sword of heaven and earth in Lin Tian's hand. What level of treasure weapon is this? Where did you get it? At this moment, he realized that the reason why Lin Tian was able to injure him twice with his barren realm cultivation was because of the sword of heaven and earth in his hand. However, he didn't know the nature of the sword and thought that it was a treasure weapon. Lin Tian looked at him and smiled indifferently. Naturally, he wouldn't answer this question. He just stood there, and with a slight movement of his mind, the eighth seal on his soul root let out a sizzling sound and immediately collapsed. The eighth seal was unsealed. Boom! In an instant, a shocking halo rushed out of his body and turned into a blazing light beam that soared into the sky. With him as the center, within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles, surging spiritual power immediately rushed toward him. At the same time, in the Qianshan family, the underground foundation began to glow. All the heavenly materials and earthly treasures, as well as sacred pills and precious medicines, also turned into the purest psionic power and Taoist power, surging toward him. Together with the psionic power of heaven and earth that surged from other places, it madly surged into his body and spread to all parts of his body. Suddenly, his essence, qi, and spirit rose like a volcanic eruption, and his cultivation stepped into the middle stage of the barren realm in the blink of an eye. Above his head, mysterious anomalies of heaven and earth intertwined. There were at least tens of thousands of them. Each anomaly of heaven and earth seemed to be real, as if they were going to crush and destroy the entire eight-dimensional world. Such a scene immediately made the old ancestor of the Qianshan clan's face change in shock again. At the same time, the other powerhouses of this clan were all shocked. The dense visions of heaven and earth that surrounded Lin Tian's head made them tremble uncontrollably at this moment. One person could trigger so many visions of heaven and earth. You! The old ancestor of the Qianshan clan, who was in the eighth-dimensional realm, suddenly realized that he seemed to have kicked a super iron plate. How could a person who could trigger so many visions of heaven and earth be an ordinary person? His background must be so powerful that it could scare people to death. Boom! Psionic Tao power rolled and surged, constantly pouring into Lin Tian's body. There was psionic Tao power floating naturally between heaven and earth, and there was also psionic Tao power from the foundation of the Qianshan clan and endless heaven and earth treasures. They poured into Lin Tian's body, causing Lin Tian's essence, qi, and spirit to rise even faster. Ancestor, the foundation, and the heaven and earth treasures, divine pills, and precious medicines in our clan's treasury are all. The head of the Qianshan clan was horrified. Ancestor Qianshan, who was in the eighth-dimensional realm, naturally sensed this. He gritted his teeth and quickly formed a seal to support the defense killing formation. However, this killing formation had just been set up when it was forcibly destroyed by the aura outside Lin Tian's body. Don't waste your energy, Lin Tian said calmly. He raised the three-dimensional sword in his hand and slashed at Ancestor Qianshan again. Now, the eighth seal on his soul root had been unlocked. In an instant, he felt as if he had become a different person. Majestic potential overflowed, and his perception of heaven and earth became sharper. Everything was incomparably clear. Clang! The sound of the sword was ear-piercing. As he swung the sword, the sharp sword light arrived in front of the Qianshan clan's ancestor in the blink of an eye. This time, more than half of the Qianshan clan's ancestor's body was blasted into pieces. Blood splattered across the void. The Qianshan clan's ancestor was horrified. He quickly repaired his body, growled, and summoned the clan's treasure weapon. This was a treasured cauldron named the Qianshan Cauldron. It was at the 8th dimensional level. As soon as it appeared, it pressed down on Lin Tian. Wherever it passed, the space was destroyed. In this regard, Lin Tian's expression was very calm. The three-dimensional power of heaven and earth intertwined with the source seal law to meet the cauldron. When the two collided, the cauldron buzzed and was directly shaken away. Lin Tian raised his hand and grabbed the cauldron. The three-dimensional power of heaven and earth combined with the source seal law pulled the cauldron back. After that, with the three-dimensional power of heaven and earth, he directly erased the Qianshan clan's imprint in the cauldron. Then, he put the 8-dimensional cauldron into the 3-dimensional world. You! Again! Ancestor Qianshan was shocked, frightened, and angry. His whole body burst out with a monstrous holy light, and he rushed straight toward Lin Tian. His Qianshan clan's treasure weapon had been taken away by Lin Tian. How could he bear this? Facing this person rushing toward him, Lin Tian's expression did not change at all. He slowly raised the sword of heaven and earth in his hand. Goodbye. He said these two words calmly. The three-dimensional sword of heaven and earth burst out with the most dazzling light, and the sword slashed down. With a clang, a dazzling sword light burst out and pressed down as if it was going to split the sky. Puff! A bloody mist burst out, and the holy light outside Ancestor Qianshan's body was instantly annihilated. Then, his whole body was immediately enveloped by the sword. He did not even have time to scream before his body and soul were destroyed. In an instant, within the Qianshan clan, all the powerhouses of the Qianshan clan could not help but cry out in horror. How? How could this be? Ancestor, ancestor! Many people trembled, and their cheeks turned pale. The strongest person of this generation of their clan, an 8-dimensional realm cultivator, was killed by Lin Tian in the clan. You! The group of grand elders looked at Lin Tian, their eyes turning red as they clenched their fists. Lin Tian glanced at these people. I'll give you a warning, and also a chance. He glanced at the powerhouses of this clan. Now don't move. Otherwise, you will go to hell with your ancestor. The powerhouses of the Qianshan clan trembled. Some of them were clenching their hands, but after hearing Lin Tian's warning, they immediately loosened their hands. Their eyes were filled with fear, and they did not dare to move. Chapter 2450. Lin Tian glanced at the trembling members of the Qianshan family, and didn't pay them any attention. He continued to guide the spiritual energy in his surroundings. 1. 9-colored holy radiance shrouded his body, and in the sky, numerous phenomena appeared. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. Dong! 7 days later, on this day, the sky exploded, and a huge lightning vortex appeared. Black lightning crackled within, and a destructive aura blanketed the sky. 7 days later, he unlocked the 8th seal on the soul root. On this day, he had reached the tribulation realm. A tribulation realm, heavenly tribulation appeared, surging violently. Within the Qianshan family, all the cultivators were frightened and trembling. At this time, facing the lightning tribulation summoned by Lin Tian, even the grand elders and patriarch of this branch were no exception. Their eyes were filled with fear. It was simply because the might of the tribulation realm heavenly punishment that Lin Tian summoned was simply too strong. Lin Tian glanced at these people, paused for a moment, and temporarily returned to the desolation realm, causing the heavenly tribulation to disperse. This could be considered as him being merciful to the people of the Qianshan family. Otherwise, if he were to directly undergo his tribulation here, not many people in the Qianshan family would be able to survive. After all, The eight-dimensional ancestor of the Qianshan family had already been killed by him, and the strongest person in the Qianshan family was only a tribulation realm expert. How could they withstand his tribulation, lightning tribulation? Then, he stepped into the center of the Qianshan family and collected all the divine arts, ancient scriptures, and ancient weapons of this branch. "Consider it a reward for being merciful," he casually said and left. The patriarch and the grand elders of this branch all had extremely ugly expressions, but they didn't dare to say anything. At this time, they didn't dare to provoke Lin Tian. Lin Tian's battle prowess was too terrifying, and it was beyond common sense. It wasn't until Lin Tian walked far away and disappeared into the immortal mountains that the Qianshan family's patriarch and grand elders couldn't help but roar towards the sky. Some of them even spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. On this day, Lin Tian's people crushed the entire Qianshan family. The cultivation resources that their family had accumulated until now were all gone, and even the foundation of the family was gone. The price was too great. Lin Tian left the Qianshan family, and soon arrived at a desolate mountain range. Dong! Thunder exploded in the sky. He stepped into the tribulation realm here and triggered a tribulation realm tribulation. Thunder rumbled, and destructive lightning tribulation came crashing down one after another. The heavenly tribulation only dissipated after a total of 10,000 lightning strikes. Then, 7 colored auspicious clouds began to appear. Others' tribulation is only 1,000 tribulation lightning tribulation, but 10,000 tribulation lightning tribulation. He muttered to himself and smiled. He didn't care too much about this tribulation. Then, he used the 7-colored light from the 7-colored auspicious clouds to stabilize his cultivation and temper his physique. About half an hour later, the 7-colored auspicious clouds disappeared and his tribulation realm cultivation base was stabilized. His combat prowess had increased by a lot. The most important thing was still his potential. Now that the 8th seal on his soul root had been broken, he felt that the world had become extremely clear. Everything in the world entered his eyes, and in the blink of an eye, he could understand the essence of everything. A faint light intertwined in his eyes. He paused for a moment, then began to comprehend on the ground that had been scorched black by the lightning tribulation. Of the 8 types of 8th-dimensional laws in the 8th-dimensional sky, he had mastered the Origin Seal Law, the Tao Transformation Law, and the Heaven Suppression Law. At this moment, after breaking the 8th seal on his soul root, his perception of heaven and earth and his understanding of all things had reached an extremely high point. At this time, he began to comprehend the remaining 5 types of 8th-dimensional laws. Soon 7 days passed. Buzz! 7 days later. On this day, various kinds of light intertwined around his body, and various law fluctuations revolved around him. With the soul root that had broken the 8th seal, he had also mastered the remaining 5 types of 8th-dimensional laws in 7 days. At this point, all 8 types of 8th-dimensional laws were in his hands, and he had cultivated them to great success. This could be said to be heaven-defying to the extreme. If other people were to find out that he had grasped all the laws of the 8 dimensions in such a short period of time and had even cultivated them to great success, they would probably be scared silly. It was because this was truly too shocking. Reincarnation. He paused for a moment, stood in this place without moving, and began to deduce reincarnation. The cultivation and deduction of the Tao of reincarnation were many times more difficult than the other laws. He used the soul root that had unsealed the 8th seal to comprehend the Tao of reincarnation. He stood here for a whole month, and his comprehension of the Tao of reincarnation became more profound. After that, he fused all of the 8-dimensional laws into the 3-dimensional world in his body, causing the 3-dimensional world in his body to undergo a huge transformation within a short period of time. It became at least several hundred to 1,000 times stronger than before. In about a few decades, I will be able to completely refine all the dimensional laws that have been imprinted into it, he muttered to himself. Once the 3-dimensional heaven and earth smelted all the dimensional laws, its power would definitely be frighteningly strong. He took a deep breath, paused for a moment, and then left. In the Qianshan family, he had taken away all the ancient scriptures and ancient books of the Qianshan family, including the immeasurable ancient pavilion, northern cold palace, and the wind and flame sword sect. At this time, he was prepared to visit them one by one and return the favor. Soon, he walked far away and headed towards the northern cold palace. That Duan Muqi is really terrifying. He has already mastered the fourth type of eighth-dimensional law. This is unprecedented in history. The first in history. Who can compare to him? I don't know where the person who killed Duan Muqi's beast went. I heard that Duan Muqi is personally searching for him. Of course he is hiding. If he doesn't hide, he will be killed by Duan Muqi the moment he shows himself. That's true. In front of him, on a road, a group of cultivators walked towards him, and they were discussing as they walked. In the next moment, this group of people saw Lin Tian, and their expressions changed drastically as they trembled violently. Lin Tian didn't care about these people's reactions, and just walked past them. The strongest in this group of cultivators was at the Alpha Origin stage, and they were all horrified. Only when Lin Tian walked far away did they breathe a sigh of relief, and some even trembled. He actually came out and didn't hide? Someone's heart palpitated. Next to him, a trace of greed appeared in someone's eyes. Duan Muqi has come out and announced that as long as you provide clues about that person's whereabouts, he will find Lin Tian and suppress him. He will also give you some good rewards. Why don't we? Forget it, don't be greedy. How many people have died in that person's hands? Even the Tribulation Realm sect master of the Wind and Flame Sword sect was killed. If that person doesn't die and comes to find us, can we bear his anger? A more rational person said. The person who spoke opened his mouth, and the greed in his eyes gradually disappeared. That makes sense, then forget it. Let's go. The group of people left, and continued walking in the direction they came from. Lin Tian didn't change his direction after leaving the place he came from. He continued to walk toward North Winter Palace. At the same time, with a slight thought, he brought out hundreds of thousands of divine sense imprints. Duan Muqi, if you want to kill me, come to North Winter Palace and I'll send you to your death. His voice was mixed in with the hundreds of thousands of divine sense imprints, and it spread throughout the entire 8 dimensions in 2 days. For a time, all the cultivators in the 8 dimensions world were shocked. That person, is he crazy? How dare he expose his whereabouts and provoke Duan Muqi? How dare he do that? He's at North Winter Palace? Or is he going to North Winter Palace? Why is he going there? That's nonsense, isn't it? To mislead Duan Muqi. After all, he shouldn't be so stupid to expose his whereabouts. Seeing Lin Tian's divine sense imprints, all the cultivators in the 8 dimensions world were shocked. They couldn't understand. Everyone in North Winter Palace was also shocked. Lin Tian had provoked Duan Muqi and included their North Winter Palace in it. Arrogant brat, you want to come to my North Winter Palace? You're courting death. The higher-ups of North Winter Palace had extremely cold eyes. They even reported to their ancestor who was in seclusion after being injured by the Sky Pillar Patriarch. At the same time, in another place, a cold man and a 17 or 18-year-old girl were walking together. Despicable thing, brother, we can't let him off so easily, the girl said hatefully. The cold man didn't say anything. He wrapped the girl in majestic saint power and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The man was Duan Muqi. Although he felt that Lin Tian was most likely talking nonsense, he still moved and headed toward North Winter Palace. Time passed in a flash, and 5 days passed. 5 days later. On this day, Lin Tian arrived at a stretch of sacred mountains. Looking around, there were many immortal palaces in the sacred mountains. They were all intertwined with a shocking aura of immortality and Tao. It was one of the top 8 orthodoxies in the 8 dimensions world, North Winter Palace. When he arrived at this place, he headed straight for the Northern Cold Palace. He's really here? What is he trying to do? I heard that the North Winter Palace's patriarch attacked him. Is he here to take revenge? Is there any other reason other than that? Yes. That is. He's crazy. He's a fool. Many cultivators had gathered around the sacred mountains where North Winter Palace was located. After seeing Lin Tian's divine consciousness imprint, they rushed over from the vicinity of North Winter Palace to watch the show. Originally, these cultivators didn't really believe Lin Tian's divine consciousness imprint. They didn't believe that Lin Tian would dare to expose his real whereabouts, and they didn't think that Lin Tian would come here. However, they were really concerned about this matter. Therefore, even if they thought that Lin Tian was talking nonsense, they still came here. Chapter 2451. Lin Tian didn't care about the expressions of the cultivators around the Saint Mountain. He went straight to the Northern Cold Palace. The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace had attacked him before, so he came here to pay him back. Humph! A cold voice sounded, and Saint Aura surged. Inside the North Winter Palace, dozens of figures stepped out. The leader was the Grand Palace Master of the North Winter Palace, followed by the current Palace Master of the North Winter Palace, a few Grand Elders, and a group of other cultivators. Lin Tian's gaze fell on the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, and he walked toward him calmly. You're courting death! The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace's eyes were cold, but at the same time, there were wisps of light in them. Duan Muki hadn't arrived yet, and Lin Tian had already arrived. If he suppressed Lin Tian and handed him over to Duan Muki would still owe him a favor. Immediately he stepped forward, and his eighth-dimensional Saint Aura intertwined and grabbed at Lin Tian. What happened in the Qianshan family was strictly forbidden by the higher-ups of the Qianshan family, so no one in the eighth-dimensional realm knew about it. Naturally, the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace didn't know that Lin Tian had killed the Grand Ancestor of the Qianshan family. At this time, he didn't care about Lin Tian at all. He looked at Lin Tian as if he was looking at an ant. Lin Tian's expression didn't change at all. He simply raised his hand and grabbed the Grand Palace Master's wrist. The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace was shocked. You, crack! Lin Tian exerted force and crushed the Grand Palace Master's wrist, and then he kicked the Grand Palace Master's abdomen. With a bang, the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace was sent flying. Grand Ancestor! The cultivators of the Northern Cold Palace were all shocked. At the same time, the cultivators in the Saint Mountain Range were also shocked. How is this possible? These cultivators couldn't believe it. The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace was an eighth-dimensional realm cultivator, but now he was injured by Lin Tian in a single move. The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace stabilized his body, and his broken hand bones recovered in the blink of an eye. Tribulation Realm, he said coldly. When he first met Lin Tian was only at the mid-seventh dimensional realm. But now, in just a few months, Lin Tian had actually stepped into the Tribulation Realm from the mid-seventh dimensional realm. You obtained quite a lot of heavenly treasures at the bottom of the sea. He wasn't surprised that Lin Tian had stepped into the Tribulation Realm. After all, Lin Tian had taken all the treasures of the Heaven Pillar sect at the bottom of the ocean. With those treasures and divine pills, it was entirely possible for Lin Tian to reach the Tribulation Realm in a few months. He looked at Lin Tian, and with a loud boom, his saint energy surged to its peak. This time you, clang! Lin Tian raised his hand, and a sharp sword light slashed out. Its speed was astonishing, and at the same time, the sword force was also very frightening. Puff! The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace was directly penetrated. Blood splattered across the void. How is this possible? In the Saint Mountain, the faces of all the cultivators changed in shock. The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, who was in the eighth-dimensional realm, had used all his strength just now, but he was still injured by Lin Tian. How shocking was this? He's only in the Tribulation Realm. How can he injure the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace so easily? The cultivators couldn't figure it out. The Northern Cold Palace was even more shocked, and their eyes were filled with horror. With a loud boom, the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace stabilized his body and healed his injuries. He stared at Lin Tian in shock and anger. He was a dignified 8th-dimensional expert, but now, he was injured twice by Lin Tian, a Tribulation Realm cultivator, in front of everyone in a short period of time. Die! With a furious roar, he activated his Order God art and pressed down on Lin Tian one by one. The pressure of an 8th-dimensional expert immediately covered the entire place. In this regard, Lin Tian's expression didn't change at all. The 4-symbol seal intertwined and met the Grand Palace Master's attack head-on. The unparalleled seal power intertwined and completely sealed the Grand Palace Master's saint power. Then, a punch landed on the Grand Palace Master's body. He didn't show any mercy in this punch, and his pure physical strength completely erupted. Reincarnation fist. Puff. Blood splattered, and the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace was crushed on the spot. His divine soul was immortal and didn't shatter under this attack. Shocked and angry, he quickly flew toward Hoi. Lin Tian looked at the Grand Palace Master's divine soul and didn't say anything else. He silently activated the reincarnation god slaying technique. This was a technique he created himself. It attacked the divine soul and hit the Grand Palace Master's divine soul in the blink of an eye. Ah! The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace let out a heart-wrenching scream, and his divine soul immediately shattered. Ancestral Patriarch! The current Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, the Grand Elders of the Northern Cold Palace, and the other cultivators all trembled. At the same time, the other cultivators' expressions changed drastically. Many people even shuddered at the thought of this. How is this possible? The Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, an 8-dimensional realm cultivator, was killed by Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. He was only in the Tribulation Realm. How could he have such combat strength? Lin Tian glanced at these people and didn't pay them any attention. He walked toward the Northern Cold Palace. Although he killed the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace, he didn't want to destroy the Northern Cold Palace. Instead, he wanted to take away the cultivation resources of this branch and use them to strengthen the Celestial Court. The current Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace and the other cultivators of the Northern Cold Palace were not far away from the main gate of the Northern Cold Palace. When they saw Lin Tian walking toward them, they were all shocked and couldn't help but step back with fear in their eyes. Their 8th-dimensional realm ancestral patriarch was killed by Lin Tian just like that. Is Lin Tian going to kill them next? Lin Tian knew what these people were thinking at this moment, but he didn't say anything. His footsteps didn't change at all. However, in the next moment, he stopped and looked toward the northeast. Almost in the next moment, 2 figures appeared there. One was a man, and the other was a girl. They arrived in the blink of an eye. Duan Muqi. Duan Muyu. The cultivators' expressions changed as they recognized the newcomers. For a moment, many people couldn't help but shudder. Duan Muqi, the strongest person in the 8th dimension who had mastered 4 types of 8th-dimensional laws, was here at this moment. The current Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace and the other cultivators of the Northern Cold Palace were stunned at first. Then, they clenched their fists and hatred appeared in their eyes. They looked at Lin Tian without the fear from before. It was as if they were looking at a corpse. Duan Muqi had arrived at the end of the 8th dimension and had mastered 4 types of 8th-dimensional laws. Lin Tian could only die today. Brother, it's him. Kill him. Next to Duan Muqi, Duan Muyu pointed at Lin Tian and said hatefully. A few months ago, because she couldn't defeat Lin Tian, she didn't dare to show any hostility in front of Lin Tian. She was afraid that Lin Tiansha would kill her. But now, her brother Duan Muqi was next to her. She had no scruples at all because she knew how powerful her brother was. Lin Tian was definitely not a match for him. Duan Muqi's eyes were deep, and there seemed to be thousands of stars revolving around them. His gaze fell on Lin Tian. Looking at Lin Tian, he didn't say anything superfluous and directly attacked. Thousands of rays of holy light surged out of his body with undisguised killing intent, pressing straight toward Lin Tian. Die with my holy night. That was all he said. Thousands of rays of holy light surged and surged, instantly annihilating a large area of the void, causing the surrounding cultivators' hearts to palpitate. So scary! Someone's heart palpitated. Duanmuqi's casual attack was thousands of times more powerful than the full power attack of the North Chill Palace's ancestor. The destructive holy light fell in front of Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. Lin Tian's expression was very calm. His right hand was intertwined with dazzling holy light, and he directly slapped down. With a whoosh, the holy light released by Duanmuqi was instantly annihilated. Such a scene caused the expressions of all the cultivators present to change. Duanmuqi's attack just now was absolutely terrifying. Even a mid-eighth dimensional expert couldn't withstand it. But now, Lin Tian actually shattered such an attack with a single slap. Even Duanmuqi's eyes narrowed slightly as his gaze deepened. Lin Tian was clearly only at the early stage of the Tribulation Realm, but he was actually able to shatter the attack he had just unleashed. This truly moved him. You have some ability, he said coldly. Around his body, ancient seals appeared. They were sacred and terrifying. Origin Seal Law! At this place, the eyes of all the cultivators lit up. Duanmuyu looked at Lin Tian and said coldly, See? This is the 8th dimensional law that my brother controls. It's one of the 8 strongest forces in this world. Moreover, my brother also controls the Tao transforming law, the heaven suppressing law, and the Dian law. You're dead today. Lin Tian's expression didn't change at all. His gaze only fell on Duanmuqi. Then, ancient seals appeared around his body. This is Origin. Origin Seal Law? He also controls the 8th dimensional law? At this place, the cultivators couldn't help but be shocked when they saw the Origin Seal Law that Lin Tian released. The current palace master of the North Chill Palace, the Grand Elders, and the other experts of the North Chill Palace were also shocked. Even Duanmuqi's eyes narrowed again. However, in the next moment, his expression returned to normal. Outside his body, ancient seals pressed down on Lin Tian. Lin Tian controlling the Origin Seal Law wasn't a big deal to him because he controlled 4 8th-dimensional laws. Moreover, his cultivation was much higher than Lin Tian's. As the ancient seals pressed down on Lin Tian, Duanmuqi also made a move. A giant hand of light grabbed at Lin Tian. Lin Tian's expression didn't change. He met the attack with the Origin Seal Law. At the same time, he activated the 9 reincarnation swords and used the Origin Seal Law to slash at Duanmuqi's giant hand of light. Do you think that you're amazing because you control 4 8th-dimensional laws? His voice was calm as he looked at Duanmuqi. After the Origin Seal Law, he activated the Tao Transforming Law, the Heaven Suppressing Law, the Dian Law, the Void Law, the 8 Extreme Law, the Mental Demon Law, and the Sage Law. Along with the Origin Seal Law, all 8 8th-dimensional laws appeared. Beside him, the void started to distort and crackle. Chapter 2452. How is this possible? Everyone in the Saint Mountains trembled, and they were all dumbfounded. 8 types of 8th-dimensional laws. 8 types of 8th-dimensional laws were intertwined around Lin Tian's body at the same time. How is this possible? The current palace master of the North Cold Palace, the Grand Elders, and the other overlords were all dumbfounded. Duanmuqi was the #1 expert in the 8th-dimensional sky. He had mastered 4 types of 8th-dimensional laws, and no one could compare to him. But now, in front of them, Lin Tian had mastered all of the 8th-dimensional laws at the same time. A single person had mastered all of the 8th-dimensional laws. What was this? Was this something that a human could do? No. Impossible. It's impossible. Duanmuyu's expression changed. Her brother, the #1 expert in the 8th-dimensional sky, had only mastered 4 types of 8th-dimensional laws. But Lin Tian had mastered all of them. Even Duan Muqi's expression changed at this moment, and his pupils couldn't help but twitch violently. Then, his eyes turned cold. The Tao melting law, heaven suppressing law, and Dian law appeared at the same time. Terrifying grand techniques intertwined and manifested. The pressure of the peak of the eighth dimensional was vast and mighty, directly pressing down on Lin Tian. He had obtained the inheritance of a sovereign of heaven and earth. Along the way, he had crushed everyone. Even after using all his strength, he could only control 4 types of eighth-dimensional laws, and it was very difficult. However, Lin Tian had mastered all of them. This made him, who had mastered 4 types of eighth-dimensional laws, seem like nothing. How could he endure this? Boom! 4 types of eighth-dimensional laws appeared at the same time, shaking heaven and earth. Ancient grand techniques manifested at the same time, and the aura was extremely terrifying. The space in all directions was distorted and shattered, forcing the cultivators in the same mountains to retreat, for fear of being affected. Once affected by such an attack, even an early-stage expert in the eighth dimensional would be instantly annihilated. You said that everyone in the world would suppress me, and you thought that you were the sovereign of the eighth dimensional sky. Now, are you anxious? Facing Duan Muqi's attack, Lin Tian seemed very calm. Because you, who thought that you were the sovereign of the eighth dimensional, only mastered 4 types of eighth dimensional laws. But now, someone in front of you has mastered all of them. Do you think your halo has been overshadowed? As he said these words, 8 types of laws of the eighth dimension surged out from outside his body. They were majestic and mighty, crushing all the space. Qi! 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 In the blink of an eye, all of Duan Muqi's eighth-dimensional laws and ancient techniques were blocked. Duan Muqi's eyes turned cold, and the eighth-dimensional aura around his body became even more turbulent and violent. His cultivation base was much higher than Lin. Killed Duan Muqi killed? Boom! He raised his hand, and with one hand facing the sky, a giant wheel of light appeared, as if it could crush everything. Moreover, the 4 types of fourth-dimensional laws shook together and pressed down on Lin Tian. The attack this time was thousands of times stronger than before. Facing such an attack, Lin Tian's expression still did not change. You think that your cultivation base is much higher than mine, and you can't beat me with your 8-dimensional laws, so you use your cultivation base to suppress me. He was very calm. Unfortunately, you will still be disappointed. As his words fell, the 3-dimensional world in his body shook, and a sword of heaven and earth quickly condensed in his hand. Combined with the 8 types of eighth-dimensional laws, he slashed down. Clang! The sound of the sword was ear-piercing, shaking heaven and earth. The sword of heaven and earth was extremely powerful. Combined with the 8 types of eighth-dimensional laws, it instantly shattered all of Duan Muqi's attacks. Then, the sword light did not slow down and continued to press down on Duan Muqi. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of him. Puff! Blood splattered. Duan Muqi's chest was penetrated, and he was sent flying thousands of feet away. Brother! Duan Muqi's expression changed. At the same time, the other experts in the sacred mountain range were all shaken. Lin Tian controlled all of the 8-dimensional laws by himself. In terms of control of the 8-dimensional laws, he was far stronger than Duan Muqi. Then, at this moment, Duan Muqi's cultivation base was at the peak of the 8-dimensional laws, but he was still suppressed by Lin Tian, who was in the tribulation realm. In the distance, Duan Muqi stabilized his body, and his expression changed completely. His gaze fell on the sword of heaven and earth in Lin Tian's hand. He could see that Lin Tian was able to injure him with one strike because of this sword. His eyes were extremely deep, and thousands of stars revolved in them. He paused for a moment, then retreated and came to Duan Muqiu. The next time we meet, I will kill you! As his words fell, divine light intertwined, and he left with Duan Muqiu. With his powerful strength and sharp divine instinct, he could feel that Lin Tian with that sword of light was extremely strong. He was definitely not his opponent now. Only when he reached the primordial realm after reaching the 8th dimension would he be able to suppress Lin Tian. Ran away? In the Saint Mountains, the faces of the cultivators all changed. Duanmuchi, the current number 1 in the 8th dimension, actually ran away in front of Lin Tian, who was in the tribulation realm. Brother! Duanmuyu was wrapped in Duanmuchi's divine light. Seeing her brother running away at this moment, her eyes were filled with disbelief. At the same time, she glared at Lin Tian with hatred. Lin Tian's gaze was indifferent. Seeing Duanmuchi running away, his expression did not change. The sword in his hand slashed down once again. With a clang, the sword of heaven and earth was intimidating. Accompanied by 8 types of 8-dimensional laws, it instantly pressed down on Duanmuchi, sending him flying. Duanmuyu was no exception. The brother and sister coughed out large mouthfuls of blood from afar. Duanmuyu was protected by Duanmuchi, so her injuries were not serious. At this moment, she fell a few 100 feet away from Duanmuchi. Lin Tian held the sword of heaven and earth. He did not care about Duanmuyu. His gaze fell on Duanmuchi. Activating his space-time laws, he stepped in front of Duanmuchi. Clang! The sound of the sword was ear-piercing. Without any unnecessary movements, he raised his hand and slashed down at Duanmuchi. The sharp sword moved Duanmuchi's expression. He immediately activated his full strength and met Lin Tian's sword head-on. However, it was useless. The saint energy that he summoned was shattered by Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. Poof! The sword of heaven and earth pressed down steadily and landed on his body. It directly shattered his body. Only his spiritual soul was left. With a whoosh, his spiritual soul retreated. Along with the broken flesh and bones, his body reformed in the blink of an eye. Lin Tian looked at his opponent. His expression did not change at all. He raised the sword of heaven and earth in his hand again. However, in the next moment, his expression changed slightly. He tilted his head and looked in Duanmuyu's direction. His eyes narrowed slightly. At the same time, Duanmuchi was also moved. Little you, leave there! Behind Duanmuyu, a tall figure appeared. His face was full of demonic runes, and his demonic aura filled the sky. Roar! A demonic roar shook the heavens and earth. Demonic light surged and directly engulfed Duanmuyu. With a poof, in the boundless demonic light, Duanmuyu exploded before he could even scream. His flesh and blood, along with his spiritual soul, were swallowed into the tall figure's stomach. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. That is, Sky Pillar Ancestor! The group of cultivators was shocked. They immediately fled at top speed. In the past, the Heaven Pillar sect, the number 1 expert in the 8th dimensional sky, the Heaven Pillar Ancestor, had disappeared for countless years. He had reappeared at the bottom of the ocean and turned into a world-destroying demon. He had already slaughtered and devoured many living beings, but who would have thought that he would appear here at this time? He was the source of destruction. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed. He had not expected the Sky Pillar Ancestor to appear here at this time. Moreover, he could clearly feel that the Sky Pillar Ancestor's aura was even more terrifying. He had already reached the primordial realm. Roar! The demonic roar filled the sky. After devouring Duanmuyu, the Sky Pillar Ancestor's gaze fell on Lin Tian. With a long roar, he pounced straight at Lin Tian. The boundless demonic light reached Lin Tian first and swept toward Lin Tian like a raging wave. The terrifying demonic power was vast and mighty. The sacred mountain was drowned in the demonic light. Patches of green plants instantly withered. Has he sensed the strength of my spiritual soul and wants to devour it? Lin Tian's eyes flashed. He pounced toward the Sky Pillar Ancestor and used the reincarnation step to dodge the demonic light. On the other side, Duanmuchi's expression was ugly. His own sister had died here just like that. He clenched his fists and looked at Lin Tian. When he saw the Sky Pillar Ancestor pouncing toward Lin Tian, he paused for a moment and immediately retreated. He turned into a beam of light and rushed into the distance. His sister was already dead. He could not change anything. Now, he had to protect himself. At this time, taking advantage of the Sky Pillar ancestor pouncing toward Lin Tian to leave this place was the best choice. Whoosh! There was a loud piercing sound. In the blink of an eye, he had rushed far away. Lin Tian avoided the Sky Pillar ancestor's boundless demonic light. He saw Duanmuchi retreating, but his expression did not change. "You can't escape," he said indifferently. The space-time laws moved, and space-time distorted. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Duanmuchi. Die! Without any superfluous words, he used all his strength this time. 8 types of 8-dimensional laws combined with the 3-dimensional sword of heaven and earth. He also used the reincarnation forging spiritual art and the 4-dimensional indestructible law together to form an apocalyptic sword light. Duanmuchi was immediately horrified. "You!" Poof! Blood splattered. Under this sword, Duanmuchi was immediately smashed into pieces. His spiritual soul was also completely annihilated under this sword. In an instant, the cultivators who had escaped far away from the sacred mountain were all shocked. "Dead, dead," someone said in a trembling voice. Duanmuchi, the top cultivator in the 8-dimensional sky, had been killed by Lin Tiansha just like that. He. This group of cultivators looked at Lin Tian from afar, and all of them were terrified. Who was the real top cultivator in the 8-dimensional sky? Was it Duanmuchi? Obviously, it was not. In this generation, the top cultivator in the 8-dimensional sky was Lin Tian. The current palace master of the Beihan Palace, and the other overlords of the Beihan Palace were all trembling. What kind of terrifying person did their ancestral patriarch offend? Roar! At this moment, the demonic roar shook the sky and sounded again. Chapter 2453. The demonic aura surged and was extremely terrifying. In the blink of an eye, the sky-high ancestor was right in front of Lin Tian. The boundless demonic aura pressed down on Lin Tian. The surrounding space was instantly annihilated. Lin Tian dodged to the side and used the samsara steps to retreat dozens of feet away. Roar! The sky-high ancestor was completely bewitched. Like a wild beast, he changed directions and pounced on Lin Tian again. The suppression of the primitive realm was mighty and terrifying to the extreme. Primitive realm! The sky-high ancestor from back then, actually. That person can he defeat him? How can he defeat him? After all, he's only in the tribulation realm. There's no way he can defeat a primitive realm cultivator. But... Someone's voice trembled as he clenched his fists. But he must win! You must win! Now that Lin Tian was in the tribulation realm, it was almost impossible for him to defeat the primitive realm's sky-high ancestor. That was why everyone thought that Lin Tian's chances of defeating the sky-high ancestor was 0. Even so, these people hoped that Lin Tian could defeat the sky-high ancestor. They hoped that Lin Tian could kill the sky-high ancestor. This was because even though Patriarch Qin Tian had been devouring living beings all over the 8th-dimensional space, he was still in the 8th-dimensional space at that time. Even though the 8th-dimensional cultivation world was wary of him, they still thought that with Duanmuchi around, Duanmuchi would be able to deal with him. But now, Duanmuchi was killed and the sky-high ancestor had stepped into the primordial realm. Under such circumstances, if Lin Tian couldn't kill him, the 8th-dimensional sky would fall into the demonic purgatory of death. Who would want their world to become like that? Who would want to live in fear of being devoured by demons every day? Now, they could only hope that Lin Tian could deal with the sky-high ancestor. Rumble! Boundless demonic aura surged. Beside the sky-high ancestor, boundless demonic aura rushed toward Lin Tian with extreme speed. The demonic aura of the primitive realm surged violently, its aura terrifying to the extreme. Lin Tian dodged again. He felt a huge pressure, but his expression didn't change at all. The sword of heaven and earth in his hand vibrated as he slashed at his opponent. With a clang, the monstrous sword force surged, bringing with it the power of the 3-dimensional world, piercing through the other party. Blood splattered everywhere. Instantly, all of the cultivators in the area were shocked. Lin Tian had actually managed to injure the primordial realm patriarch with a single strike. Roar! The Sky Pillar Grand Elder roared, and his injuries healed instantly. Demonic light gathered all over his body, interweaving into boundless demonic waves that pressed down on Lin Tian. Lin Tian raised his hand, and the sword of heaven and earth in his hand, combined with the 8 types of 8-dimensional laws, slashed down once again. The sword momentum was swift and fierce, and it pierced through the Sky Pillar Patriarch again. Now that he had unlocked 8 layers of seals on his soul root, his potential was limitless, and he had reached the Tribulation Realm. Coupled with the 3-dimensional world in his body, it was not difficult for him to deal with an early-stage primordial realm cultivator who had lost his consciousness. Clang! He waved the sword of heaven and earth in his hand, and the sword momentum was extremely swift and fierce as he slashed again. This time, the sword momentum was many times stronger than before, and it shattered half of the Sky Pillar Patriarch's body. The Sky Pillar Patriarch's body quickly reassembled, and his eyes were crimson red. Then, he suddenly trembled. Kill, 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 kill me, kill me! Intermittent sounds came from his mouth, and a trace of light flashed in his blood-red eyes. This scene moved all of the cultivators in the area. The Sky Pillar Patriarch, who had turned demonic, actually spoke. At this moment, he had regained consciousness. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed, and his gaze fell on the Sky Pillar Patriarch. What happened? He was slightly curious about the other party's condition. Demonic soul, demonic consciousness, soul devourer, want sa. The Sky Pillar Patriarch's voice was intermittent, and he suddenly screamed. Kill me! Kill me now! The Sky Pillar Patriarch, who had once been the number 1 inheritance in the 8th dimension, was now struggling. A thumb-sized black bead suddenly burst out from between his eyebrows, and endless demonic light intertwined within it. Its demonic nature was extremely frightening. Inside the black bead, one could vaguely see countless souls screaming, as if they were endless vengeful spirits from hell. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed again. Previously, he had used his Rinnegan to see the densely packed souls in the Sky Pillar Patriarch's body, and those souls had now all entered the black bead. Moreover, there were clearly more souls inside. At least, the number of souls in the Sky Pillar Patriarch's body was hundreds of thousands of times more than what he had seen with his Rinnegan. In other words, the Sky Pillar Patriarch had devoured countless living beings in the past few months. Is this the ancient artifact that the Sky Pillar Patriarch obtained back then? He looked at the black bead that was exposed between the Sky Pillar Patriarch's eyebrows. Previously, he had heard from some cultivators that the Sky Pillar Patriarch had found a shocking ancient artifact that was intertwined with demonic nature. They wanted to remove the demonic nature and use it for great purposes, but not long after that, the Sky Pillar Patriarch disappeared. Now, it seemed that the black bead between the Sky Pillar Patriarch's eyebrows was most likely the ancient artifact that the Sky Pillar Patriarch had obtained back then. Roar! An earth-shattering roar was heard, and the demonic power was monstrous. The Sky Pillar Patriarch's face was covered with demonic runes, and his eyes were red. Because he had temporarily recovered a trace of self-consciousness after being severely injured by Lin Tian, he had completely disappeared at this time. He had truly turned into a great demon and madly pounced on Lin Tian. Moreover, his aura had become even stronger because of this. With a move, the space in all directions instantly collapsed. Here, a group of holy mountains immediately collapsed, and smoke and dust filled the sky. Lin Tian felt an even stronger pressure. He could feel that the Sky Pillar Patriarch had become stronger, but his expression still did not change. In his hand, the sword of heaven and earth became even brighter, and the rolling power of heaven and earth madly surged into it. In the blink of an eye, the sword of heaven and earth in his hand boiled, exuding an extremely terrifying aura. The power of heaven and earth was vast and mighty. Clang! He raised his hand and slowly slashed down with the sword, releasing an earth-shattering sword whistle. With a whoosh, the demonic light that the Sky Pillar Patriarch had summoned was annihilated in an instant. Then, the momentum of the sword did not decrease and directly penetrated the Sky Pillar Patriarch's body. Poof! Blood splattered, and the Sky Pillar Patriarch collapsed. The black bead fell to the ground, and his spiritual body began to collapse bit by bit. Thank you. Be careful of the demonic bead. Destroy it. Intermittent words came out of his mouth, and the Sky Pillar Patriarch's broken spiritual body revealed an expression of relief. Then, in the next moment, his spiritual body completely collapsed and completely disappeared from the world. For a moment, the cultivators in this place trembled slightly and could not help but tremble. The Sky Pillar Patriarch, who had reached the primitive level, had been killed by Lin Tian so easily. At the same time, the cultivators were pleasantly surprised. The terrifying source of disaster that had threatened the entire 8th dimension sky had been eliminated by Lin Tian. The current palace master of the Northern Cold Palace and the other powerhouses of this branch were all shocked. The person that Duan Muqi and their Grand Palace Master had provoked was too terrifying. Lin Tian did not care about the others around him. His gaze fell on the black bead on the ground. The black bead was surrounded by demonic light, and one could see that there were endless souls roaring inside it. Lin Tian lowered his head and looked at the demonic bead. He thought about the Sky Pillar Patriarch's last words and paused for a moment. He raised the sword of heaven and earth in his hand, and a dazzling light shone brightly as he slashed directly at the demonic bead. Based on the Sky Pillar Patriarch's experience, even without the Sky Pillar Patriarch's words, he could tell that the demonic bead was definitely not a good thing. It was too evil and dangerous, and he had planned to destroy it. Whoosh! Suddenly, the black demonic bead vibrated as if it had a mind of its own. It dodged his sword of heaven and earth and turned into a black beam of light. Its speed was extremely fast, and it rushed into his body. Suddenly, endless demonic chi grew in his body and spread to every part of his body, as if it wanted to control him. This made Lin Tian's expression change. His tribulation realm cultivation surged and reached its peak, forcing the demonic bead out. I am the demonic ancestor of the 10 heavens and 10 earths. Give up resistance and submit to me. I will give you the supreme demonic power to look down on the world. A deep voice sounded in his heart. Lin Tian's expression changed again. His divine will instantly landed on the demonic bead in his body. The demonic bead had a mind of its own? The demonic ancestor? Rumble! The demonic light surged and attacked every part of his body, forcing his life force origin and divine soul into his sea of consciousness. He gritted his teeth and fully activated his cultivation to resist the demonic bead and force it out. He finally understood why the Sky Pillar Patriarch had become like that. He was controlled by the demonic bead and turned into a puppet. The demonic bead wanted to control him. He exerted all his strength. His saint power was majestic, and the 8 eight-dimensional laws were all activated, forcing the demonic bead out of his body. However, it was useless. The demonic light of the demonic bead was extremely powerful, and the 8 eight-dimensional laws were all suppressed. The demonic light of the demonic bead quickly extended to his life force origin and divine soul into his sea of consciousness. Get lost! He was instantly enraged, and his killing intent was vast. He opened his reincarnation eyes, and the boundless reincarnation light burst out from his body. Suddenly, the demonic bead in his body trembled and was forced out. At the same time, he retreated, panting heavily. Just now, he was so close to being controlled by the demonic bead. That is? Reincarnation. Reincarnation light? The group of cultivators who were originally here had already retreated far away. They were shocked when the demonic bead suddenly rushed into Lin Tian's body. Now they were even more shocked. Reincarnation. Lin Tian revealed the reincarnation light and opened his reincarnation eyes. Lin Tian controlled the reincarnation light. The group of cultivators was shocked. The legendary reincarnation light was a power that even the supremes of heaven and earth feared. It was said to be an invincible power that no one could control. Lin Tian actually controlled it. The current palace master of the North Winter Palace, the Grand Supreme Elders, and the other powerhouses of the North Winter Palace were all shocked and could not help but tremble. Their Grand Supreme Palace Master had provoked a person who controlled the reincarnation light. Rumble! The demonic light was vast and mighty, and it broke through the clouds. The demonic bead was forced out by Lin Tian, and it floated in the air about 3 feet away from Lin Tian. Reincarnation! A low and shocked voice came from inside the demonic bead. This time, everyone could hear it. Outside the demonic bead, the demonic light surged and condensed into a demonic shadow. Its eyes were extremely deep as it stared straight at Lin Tian. Chapter 2454. Lin Tian's expression changed immediately. The demonic shadow's aura was too terrifying. He could clearly feel that the space around him had been frozen. Moreover, the other cultivators who were further away could not even move because they were too weak. He gritted his teeth and retreated, turning into a ray of light and retreating into the distance. Ever since he stepped into the four-dimensional space, he had been suppressing all his opponents. However, he felt the threat of death in the face of this demonic shadow. His opponent's aura was too terrifying. In an instant, 4 words appeared in his mind. Supreme of heaven and earth. He intertwined the Rinnegan in his right eye and opened the Eye of Destiny in his left eye. The teleportation ability of the Eye of Destiny was activated and he kept teleporting. However, he was shocked the next moment. No matter how he teleported, he could only move within a radius of 10 feet. He could not escape at all. Boom! Mo Ying's eyes were extremely deep. A beam of demonic light shot out, covering the surroundings and pressing down mightily. Reincarnation! He looked at Lin Tian and said in a low voice. There was no killing intent in the demonic light. It was obvious that he wanted to suppress Lin Tian. The power of reincarnation was too shocking. It was the first time he had seen someone who could control reincarnation. Lin Tian was shocked. He activated the Tao of reincarnation with all his might. His life origin and soul energy surged as he faced the demonic light. When the two met, the light of reincarnation was destroyed on the spot. He was sent flying by the impact. Bright red blood gushed out of his mouth. His face turned pale and his body felt like it was about to fall apart. The demonic shadow's eyes were deep. He moved with the demonic orb and reached out to grab Lin Tian. Lin Tian's expression changed as he struggled to move. However, he was unable to move at this moment. The opponent's aura had directly imprisoned him at this moment. Damn it! Move! He roared in his heart. He used all his strength to activate the power of the three-dimensional space, but it was still useless. The demonic shadow's aura was too strong. Boundless demonic light came down. The demonic shadow's eyes shone brightly. The pitch-black demonic palm print landed in front of him in the blink of an eye. I used demonic jade to collect demonic souls. I didn't expect to find reincarnation. Very good. Junior, I allow you to become a part of me. Looking at Lin Tian, the light in his eyes grew even brighter. As long as he fused with Lin Tian using a special demonic secret art, samsara would become his. Lin Tian was extremely anxious. He roared madly in his heart. He wanted to move, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not move. At this moment, he could only watch helplessly as his opponent's large hand reached out to grab him. Despair welled up in his heart. The devil's shadow stared straight at Lin Tian, and the devil-light giant palm that had fallen in front of Lin Tian directly grabbed at Lin Tian. Reincarnation I will take, he said coldly, but in the next moment, his expression suddenly changed. The demonic palm print that was grabbing at Lin Tian shattered, and he retreated hundreds of feet away with the demonic orb. Almost at the same time, in front of Lin Tian, tens of thousands of Daos appeared on their own. A gentle but extremely powerful power of heaven and earth surged. A ray of light fell from the sky, as if it had come from an eternal unknown place. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a woman. The woman was dressed in white, like snow. She was so beautiful that no words could describe her. Because of her appearance, this part of the world became faintly brighter. The tens of thousands of deities of heaven and earth circled around her and jumped along with her. The Devil Shadow's eyes were deep and cold. He looked at the woman from hundreds of feet away, and he suddenly trembled violently. "It's you!" Looking at the woman, the Devil Shadow's deep eyes instantly revealed a deep fear, and even a trace of fear. In this place, in the distance, a group of cultivators were also moved. They were all stunned, as if they had lost their souls. So beautiful! Everyone's eyes fell on the woman, and they were all stunned by her beauty. They had never seen this kind of beauty before. At this moment, the crowd even forgot that they were unable to move because of the Devil's Shadow. On the other side, because the woman appeared in front of him, Lin Tian immediately felt that the terrifying demonic power that was pressing down on him disappeared. He could move again. He raised his hand to look at the woman in white in front of him, and then he immediately trembled violently. This woman was too beautiful. In the past, he had always thought that Wu Yi was the most beautiful woman in this world. There was absolutely no woman in this world who could compare to Wu Yi. But now, he was moved. This woman in front of him was even more beautiful than Wu Yi. And most importantly, at this moment, looking at this woman, although it was the first time he had seen her, he felt an incomparable sense of familiarity. He felt an incomparable sense of closeness from her, which made his heart beat wildly. Almost at the same time that he looked at the woman's eyes also fell on him, full of gentleness and love. Wisps of holy light overflowed and fell on Lin Tian, quickly healing Lin Tian's injured body. At the same time, she tilted her head and looked at the Devil's Shadow. Wisps of holy light appeared between heaven and earth, and in the sky, thunder exploded. The Devil's Shadow trembled and immediately said, "Goddess, let's talk things over. I didn't know that he was related to you. If I had known, I would have." Boom! Holy light surged between heaven and earth, and in the sky, destructive thunder struck down, instantly drowning the Devil's Shadow. Together with the pitch-black Devil Orb, it was directly crushed into pieces and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Then, the sky became clear again. At the same time, in the distance, the group of cultivators who could not move regained their freedom because of the Devil's Shadow's disappearance. The gazes of the crowd landed on the woman. At this moment, they were no longer shocked by her indescribable beauty. At the same time, they were also stunned by her strength. That terrifying Devil's Shadow was actually destroyed in an instant. Lin Tian's body trembled violently, and his eyes trembled violently as he looked at the woman in white. It was not because of the woman's strength, but because of the two words that the Devil's Shadow said before. Goddess. The woman in front of him was a goddess? When he was in the fourth dimension, his teacher, an old drunkard, told him that in the ninth dimension, his mother was called a goddess. The woman looked at Lin Tian, and wisps of holy light enveloped Lin Tian. In the blink of an eye, Lin Tian's injuries were healed. She was as beautiful as snow, pure and noble. Looking at Lin Tian, her eyes were mixed with joy, love, and guilt. She pulled Lin Tian into her arms and said, "You've grown up." Lin Tian's body trembled violently. Being hugged like this by the woman, he no longer had any doubts. His nose was a little sour, and he could not hold back his tears, which instantly gushed out. Leaning into the woman's arms, he felt the warmth of the woman's body. That warmth was extremely gentle, but it was as if it could melt everything in the world. Was this the feeling of being hugged by a mother? Ever since he grew up, this was the first time he experienced the feeling of being hugged by a mother. He opened his mouth, and his voice was slightly choked. After a few breaths, he said one word: "Mother." In the distance, the group of cultivators trembled. He, and she are. Everyone was shocked. The son of a supreme being of heaven and earth? Everyone trembled. Everyone had seen how terrifying the Devil's Shadow was. When the Devil's Shadow appeared, the words, "Supreme being of heaven and earth," appeared in everyone's mind. He was definitely a supreme being of heaven and earth. And the woman, who had easily defeated the Devil's Shadow and the Devil Orb, was undoubtedly a supreme being of heaven and earth. Moreover, she was an extremely terrifying supreme being of heaven and earth. She was one of the top existences among the supreme beings of heaven and earth. And such a terrifying supreme being of heaven and earth was Lin Tian's mother? The current palace master of the North Winter Palace, the Grand Elders, and the other experts of the North Winter Palace all looked horrified. Their lineage's Grand Palace master had provoked someone with such a terrifying background. He was the son of a heaven and earth supreme. The son of a supreme being of heaven and earth. What did their old ancestor do? Some of the people of the North Winter Palace even cursed Duan Miyuki in their hearts. How could he say that he would go to the 8th dimension to suppress the son of a supreme being of heaven and earth? Was there something wrong with his head? Many people wished they could drag Duan Miyuki out of hell and kill him 1,000 times over. This was simply a scam. What a scam! In the distance, the goddess let go of Lin Tian. When she saw the tears in Lin Tian's eyes, she was slightly startled. She reached out to wipe away Lin Tian's tears. Lin Tian naturally felt it. He wiped away the tears himself. "I'm fine. I'm just a little excited and happy." The goddess's eyes flickered. She put down her hand and looked at Lin Tian. There was love in her eyes, but it was gradually replaced by guilt. "I'm sorry that I didn't grow up with you. I'm really sorry." She reached out and caressed Lin Tian's face. The guilt in her eyes intensified. She was full of self-reproach. "If I could go back in time, I would have let go of everything in the 9th dimension and personally brought you to the 4th dimension. I didn't think that you would have to endure that in that world." The Heavenly Emperor knew about what Lin Tian had experienced in the 4th dimension from the Human King. Naturally, she knew about it too. Many things had deviated from her and the Heavenly Emperor's expectations. The stone seal that the Heavenly Emperor had imprinted with all the information had been separated. Her child didn't know about his background. He was adopted when he was an infant. Then, he lost everything when he was 5 years old. He had been living in hatred ever since he was 5 years old. After knowing that, she felt like her heart was being cut by a knife. She was a cultivator, but she was also a mother. If Lin Tian had suffered because of his cultivation, she wouldn't have felt sorry for him. This was because their family was all cultivators. It was normal for cultivators to suffer because of their cultivation. However, Lin Tian's suffering wasn't because of his cultivation. It was because he had to watch the family that raised him get killed. That was a mental pain. That kind of pain was incomparable to the pain of cultivation and physical pain. Back then, she and the Heavenly Emperor wanted to use the power of the reincarnation foundation of the 4th dimension to suppress Lin Tian's overly powerful soul root. This would allow Lin Tian to grow up normally without being affected by the overly powerful soul root. At the same time, they also hoped that Lin Tian would be able to take control of the complete reincarnation foundation. Therefore, they came up with a plan. They would first seal Lin Tian's 9-layered soul root, then send Lin Tian into the 4th dimension. They would let Lin Tian grow under the suppression of the reincarnation foundation. As his cultivation grew stronger, the seal on his soul root would slowly be lifted and he would gradually become stronger. Then, they would use the powerful soul root to control the complete reincarnation foundation. However, it was difficult for her and the Heavenly Emperor to escape during the 9th dimension's disaster. Therefore, they could only cast a spell to send the infant Lin Tian into the 4th dimension. However, they didn't expect that in the following years, something like that would happen to Lin Tian in the 4th dimension. If she had known in advance that something like this would happen, she would not have simply sent Lin Tian, who was still an infant, to the 4th dimension. She would have personally brought Lin Tian, who was still in swaddling clothes, to the 4th dimension. She would have accompanied Lin Tian as he grew up in the 4th dimension. At that time, she would not have cared about the disaster in the 9th dimension. How could the 9th dimension be more important than her own flesh and blood? Chapter 2455. Lin Tian knew what the goddess was thinking. "It's all in the past, it's much better now. The disappearance of the small tribe that raised him, the disappearance of the old tribe leader and the others, was an eternal pain in his heart. Even though he had taken his revenge, it was hard for him to forget what happened back then, and he would still think of the old tribe leader and the others from time to time. However, the past was the past. He had to look forward and cherish his family and friends who were still alive. The goddess's gaze fluctuated. Her child had grown up and was very sensible. This made her feel gratified, but also made her feel even more guilty. After a pause, she smiled and said, "I heard from your master and masteress that you found a few wives and even have children." The soul consciousness that the human king and the saintesses projected into the four-dimensional world dissipated, and the memories in the soul consciousness returned to their original bodies. Therefore, their original bodies in the nine-dimensional world naturally knew many things in the four-dimensional world. After that, the goddess and the celestial emperor naturally knew everything about Lin Tian in the four-dimensional world. Yes. Lin Tian nodded. There was nothing to be embarrassed about. Do you want to go and take a look? They will be very happy to see you, especially little Ruoxian. There was a glimmer in the goddess's eyes, with a kind of yearning, but after a pause she shook her head and smiled. I'm afraid there won't be a chance this time. As she spoke, her body became faint. It's just a strand of divine consciousness projected from the nine-dimensional world. It will disappear very soon. Lin Tian was shocked. This was just a strand of divine consciousness projected from the nine-dimensional world by the goddess. This surprised him, but he quickly regained his composure. What happened in the nine-dimensional world? From his instincts, he knew that something big must have happened in the nine-dimensional world, and he had been very concerned about it. Something did happen. The goddess nodded, and strands of divine light interweaved, forming a soundproof enchantment in the blink of an eye, surrounding her and Lin Tian. Only the goddess and Lin Tian could hear her voice. Do you believe in gods? Lin Tianwei paused and said, No. There were gods in the world, but as far as he knew, the so-called gods were merely powerful beings. The goddess smiled gently. There is an astonishing space in the ninth dimension. It is known as the 10 divine regions. The living beings there are all born from the heaven and earth. From the moment they were born, all of them have divine bodies. From the moment they were born with eternal life. They are gods. Lin Tian's expression changed. Is this for real? There were actually quite a number of living beings born from heaven and earth. However, all the living beings in a large space were all born from heaven and earth. Moreover, all of them had divine bodies when they were born. All of them had eternal life. This was a little frightening. It was the first time he had heard of such a thing. The goddess nodded. They are born from the heavens and earth, and they cannot be destroyed. All of them have divine bodies. They are indeed qualified to be called gods. After saying that, she continued. This matter was first discovered by the most ancient almighty expert in the ninth dimension after he accidentally spied on the sacred land. The word God also came from the mouth of that almighty expert. It was a conclusion obtained from the will of heaven and earth. As such, there is no reason to doubt it. Because of this, that almighty seemed to have touched a taboo, or suffered a backlash from the will of heaven and earth. Soon, he disappeared and died. Before he disappeared, that almighty seemed to know a lot of things, but he didn't have time to tell them in detail. He only left behind a commandment to warn the future generations that although the divine region was a sacred land, it was also a forbidden area. They should never try to open the door to the divine region. Otherwise, it would lead to a devastating disaster. Countless years ago, a few supremes of heaven and earth finally couldn't hold back and opened the door to the divine region. Monstrous spiritual power poured out immediately. At the same time, it also attracted one terrifying figure after another. The living beings in the divine region stepped out, and the entire ninth dimension trembled. One of the supremes of heaven and earth was crushed immediately. She sighed and smiled bitterly. From that day onwards, the ninth dimension was thrown into chaos. It fell into the endless flames of war, and even now, it still hasn't ended. How long has it been? Even I can't remember it clearly. Lin Tian's body couldn't help but tremble slightly when he heard this. What he heard at this time really shocked him. The door to the 10 divine regions above the 9th dimension was opened by someone. A god stepped out and wandered in the 9th dimension? An ancient supremes of heaven and earth was crushed in an instant by the living beings who stepped out of the divine region? He couldn't believe it. Supremes of heaven and earth were at the end of the known cultivation path. How could such a person be killed in an instant? They are called gods. The living beings in that sacred land are unimaginably powerful. I said they were qualified to be called gods because of their terrifying strength, the goddess said. Moreover, the crushed supremes of heaven and earth are nothing. Even I can easily kill them. Lin Tian was shocked by what happened in the space of the 10 divine regions. Hearing the goddess' words, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. Mother, are you that powerful? Is it that easy to kill other supremes of heaven and earth? As he said this, he thought of the demonic shadow from before and muttered to himself. That's right, the demonic shadow called himself the demonic ancestor. He was also a supremes of heaven and earth. He did disappear in an instant. The goddess chuckled. There are 9 supremes of heaven and earth in the 9th dimension. The demonic ancestor is one of them. He entered the Tao as a demon and is not a good person. However, that was just a strand of his demonic consciousness. The demonic orb is one of his origin artifacts. She continued, among the 9 supremes of heaven and earth in the 9th dimension, except for your father and master, the other 6 are actually very weak to me. If we really fight, I can defeat them in half a quarter of an hour alone. Lin Tian couldn't help but widen his eyes again. This was the first time he met his mother, and she was really terrifying. Except for his father and master, the human king, who he had never met before, the other supremes of heaven and earth were so weak in front of his mother. So powerful, he said with a smile. The goddess also smiled. Her gaze was gentle as she sat on the ground facing Lin Tian. After a pause, her gentle smile turned into a bitter smile. Even so, compared to the divine spirit clan in that divine region, Mother is nothing. The smile on Lin Tian's face faded a little. Was the divine spirit clan in that space really so terrifying? Even his mother, who was so powerful, claimed that she was nothing compared to the creatures of that clan. Then, he paused for a moment and said, What about Father? Compared to that clan, how is Father? Hearing his words, the goddess' expression softened. She smiled and said, Your father is the emperor of the 9th dimension, so he is naturally very strong. In the divine spirit clan, except for the most powerful 10 ancestral gods, the others are actually nothing in front of your father. As she spoke, she couldn't help but sigh. However, although your father is strong, the 10 ancestral gods are even stronger. Your father can't defeat them, she said. Even if you count your master, who is the king of the 9th dimension, the 2 of them together can't defeat them. 10 ancestral gods? Lin Tian's expression changed. His father and master couldn't defeat them even if they joined forces? That's the king of the divine spirit clan, the goddess said. The world barrier of the 10 divine domain is very strange. It is surrounded by the laws of heaven and earth. Even the 10 ancestral gods of that clan can't break through the barrier from the inside. However, it's not difficult to break through the barrier from the outside, as long as one has reached the supreme level of heaven and earth. Countless years ago, several supreme beings of heaven and earth disregarded the warning left behind by that supreme being. They wanted to become stronger and explore the new world, so they opened the gate to the 10 divine domain without permission. This caused the divine spirit clan to step out one after another. Because of this, the 9th dimension turned into a battlefield of death. Lin Tian's expression changed. The divine spirit clan in the 10 divine domain couldn't open the way out from the 10 divine domain? Then, why did the divine spirit clan start a war? He was curious. It was impossible for the god spirit race of the 10th divine domain to start a massacre just because a few supremes of heaven and earth had opened the portal to the 10th divine domain from the 9th dimension heaven. There must be a deeper reason. The goddess paused for a moment. Now that you've reached the tribulation realm, you can know the reason. She sat opposite Lin Tian and said, "The 10 divine domain is, in fact, the 10th dimension. The sacred land at the center of the 10 divine domain, the heart of dimension, fell out from the 10 divine domain countless years ago and landed among the 9 greater worlds below. The Divine Spirit Clan wanted to find the heart of dimension and bring it back, but they couldn't sense the exact location of the heart of dimension. It was too difficult to find it among the 9 greater worlds, and it would take countless years. Therefore, they planned to merge the 9 greater worlds directly into the 10 divine domain. This way, the heart of dimension would return to the 10 divine domain. By doing so, not only will the dimensional core of the 10th dimension return to the 10th dimension, but it will also allow the 10th dimension to become even stronger after being fused with the other 9 worlds. It can be considered as killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and it will allow the divine spirit race to become even more prosperous." She continued, "However, they also knew that the 9 greater worlds wouldn't agree to such a thing. Therefore, the moment they stepped out, they started a merciless massacre. They wanted to use force to forcefully merge the 9 greater worlds." Lin Tian finally understood. So that's how it was. However, in the next moment, his heart skipped a beat. 10 divine domain? Sacred land? 10 divine domain? The heart of dimension of the 10 divine domain, could it be? At this moment, he suddenly remembered what an old drunkard said to him before leaving the 10 divine domain. The 10 divine domain didn't belong to the 10 divine domain, but it fell out of the 10 divine domain. It belonged to the core of the 10 divine domain. Now that he heard the goddess' words, he instantly guessed that the 10 divine domain was formed from the heart of dimension of the 10 divine domain. The goddess looked at his expression and seemed to know what he was thinking at this time. She said, "Back then, your master and master's wife projected their soul consciousness into the lower worlds to search for the heart of dimension of the 10 divine domain. They found it, and it's an inconspicuous star in the 4 divine domain. The soul consciousness projected by the human king and the all-heavens saint is dissipated, and the memories in the soul consciousness returned to their bodies. They told the Sky Emperor and the goddess many things that happened in the 4 divine domain. Therefore, she naturally knew about the 10 divine domain. It should be said that as expected of the human king, he actually found the heart of the 10 divine domain, which even the ancestral gods of the 10 divine domains found difficult to find. Chapter 2456. Lin Tian's expression changed as he listened to the goddess' words. Sure enough, it was just as he had guessed. The 10 Directions ancient star was really the heart of the 10th dimension. At the same time, he was even more shocked by an old drunkard's strength. Even the 10 Directions ancestor gods had admitted that they couldn't find the heart of the 10th dimension, but his master actually found it in the 4th dimension. After a short pause, he thought of another matter. Then, is the 9th dimension's isolation also because of the god's spirit clan? You can say that it's related to that clan. The goddess nodded. Back then, when the Xinling clan stepped into the 9th dimension, the disparity between the 9th dimension and the Xinling clan's battle prowess was too great. In order to prevent the Xinling clan from stepping into the lower layers of the 9th dimension, your father used a great method to seal off the entire 9th dimension. Since then, those weaker than your father were unable to step out of the 9th dimension, and those from the outside world were also unable to step into the 9th dimension. In the entire God's Spirit clan, only the 10 Directions ancestor gods had the ability to break this seal. At that time, the 10 Directions ancestor gods lived high up in the 10 Directions divine domain. After learning of this matter, they wanted to step into the 10th dimension, but they were stopped by your father. Later on, your master also acted. The two of them worked together and blocked the 10 Directions ancestor gods from entering the 10 Directions divine domain. With Mother's own cultivation, it's actually impossible for me to project my divine sense here from the sealed 9th dimension. However, since it was your father who set up the seal, Mother naturally knows how to unseal it, so I was able to pass through it easily. That's the gist of it, she said to Lin Tiandao. Lin Tian's expression changed again. The ninth dimension was actually cut off by his father? How powerful was his father whom he had yet to meet? He was actually able to seal off the entire ninth dimension. All of a sudden, the goddess' body trembled slightly, and she became much fainter in an instant. Mother, you. Lin Tian's expression changed. The strand of divine sense projected by the goddess was about to dissipate. The goddess nodded. It's about time. They'll disperse soon. As she spoke, she raised her hand and pointed at Lin Tian's psyche ocean, and a mystical technique entered his psyche ocean. It was the technique to penetrate the seal of the ninth dimension. Remember Mother's words, don't come to the ninth dimension before you reach the eighth dimension. Try your best to comprehend reincarnation. The 10 ancestral gods, regardless of whether it is your father or your master, none of them can win. The only one who can end this battle is you, and only a complete reincarnation can do so. One of the reasons why your father and I sent you to the fourth dimension was because we hoped that you would be able to comprehend reincarnation and end this battle. Lin Tian's eyes moved slightly, and he nodded seriously. I understand, Mother. I will work hard to comprehend reincarnation as soon as possible. The goddess laughed softly, extremely gentle. Sitting face to face with Lin Tian, she leaned forward and hugged Lin Tian. Mother is very happy to see you after you've grown up. I'm really happy. As soon as she finished speaking, specks of holy light appeared, and the divine sense projected by her from the ninth dimension quickly disintegrated and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Lin Tian paused for a moment. Feeling the specks of holy light around him, he could not help but smile. After a few breaths, he stood up. After growing up, he finally saw his mother. This was undoubtedly a very happy day for him. Mother, wait for me. I will go to the ninth dimension soon, he muttered to himself as he looked at the unknown ninth dimension. The soundproof barrier set up by the goddess beside him gradually dissipated. In the distance, a group of cultivators looked at them with shock in their eyes. Disappeared. That supreme of heaven and earth disappeared. What did they say just now? I don't know. I couldn't hear it. Everyone was puzzled. When the goddess and Lin Tian were talking, they set up a soundproof barrier, so no one could hear what they said before. Lin Tian stood in the distance. He tilted his head and looked at the northern cold palace. Outside the northern cold palace, the current palace master, the grand elders, and the other experts of the northern cold palace all trembled violently. Everyone's faces turned pale instantly. At this moment, their fear of Lin Tian had reached its peak. He controlled all the laws of the eighth dimension and the legendary reincarnation cycle. Moreover, he was the son of a supreme of heaven and earth. Their bloodline had provoked such a terrifying figure. At this moment, when Lin Tian's gaze swept over them, they all trembled. Lin Tian looked at the northern cold palace. He paused for a moment, then directly tore open a gate of heaven and earth. Previously, the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Cold Palace wanted to suppress him and hand him over to Duan Muqi to kill. He killed the Grand Palace Master and planned to take away all the cultivation resources of the Northern Cold Palace. After that, he would go to the other inheritances that had targeted him. But now, after learning about the Divinity Clan, he thought about it and decided not to make things difficult for those inheritances. The gate of heaven and earth was intertwined with strands of holy light. It was the gate to the seventh dimension. Now, he was ready to go to the seventh dimension and find Wu Yi, Jiyu, and the others who were cultivating in the seventh dimension. He wanted to tell them about what happened in the ninth dimension and then bring them to the eighth dimension to cultivate. Because the Divinity Clan was too terrifying. In the future, there might be many unforeseen events. He wanted to let his family and friends become stronger as soon as possible. The holy spiritual chi in the eighth dimension was far superior to that of the seventh dimension. Moreover, there were many ancient regions that were filled with all kinds of treasures of heaven and earth, as well as rare immortal items. With his current strength, he could bring a group of people to various ancient regions in the eighth dimension to cultivate and search for all kinds of treasures of heaven and earth. In this way, everyone's cultivation could be improved rapidly. Without hesitation, he stepped into the tunnel of heaven and earth that led to the seventh dimension and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the distance, the cultivators of the Northern Chill Palace were stunned for a moment. Then, they were pleasantly surprised and all of them heaved a long sigh of relief. Lin Tian did not do anything to them and left just like that. This made them feel like they had just survived a disaster. I almost thought we were done for. Someone wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. God bless us! God bless us! A grand elder made a gesture of worship. It was pitch black inside the tunnel of heaven and earth. Lin Tian was inside and soon appeared in the seventh dimension. When he returned to the seventh dimension, he spread out his majestic divine will. Using the unique connection between him and Wu Yi, it did not take long for him to find Wu Yi. Ruoxian, Jiyu, Sushu, Shuiyi, Bai Qiu, Violet Fairy, Yen Yer, Ziyu, Lin Shi, and AI were also with Wu Yi. He found them all at once. Then, using Yen Yer's divination technique, he quickly found Feng Tianzuan and the others, as well as Bai Ziki and the others. F***CK. How long have you been in the eighth dimension and you've already reached the tribulation realm? You can't fool around like this! Wishing Crocodile stared at him with wide eyes. It hasn't even been a year since Lin Tian ascended to the eighth dimensional realm. In less than a year, Lin Tian actually went from the seventh dimensional realm to the current tribulation realm. This kind of cultivation speed almost made it curse out loud. The others were also surprised and could not help but shake their heads. Ruoxian hugged Lin Tian's arm and said with admiration, As expected of Daddy. His cultivation speed is even faster than before. Lin Tianyi smiled. In less than a year's time, the group had been cultivating in the seven-dimensional world, and their cultivation had improved. However, the improvement was not very obvious. Even the stunning Wu Yi had only improved by a small level. Looking at the group, he paused for a moment and took out a pile of heavenly treasures and immortal treasures. He had obtained them from the Atlas Gate ruins. He had only refined a small part of them, and now he still had a large part left. He took them out and divided them equally among the group. Refine them first and improve your cultivation. I will tell you some important things later. At this moment, the group of people were in an ancient and desolate mountain range. He stood guard for the group of people and watched them refine the heaven-raising door's natural treasures, immortal treasures, and ancient pills to increase their cultivation. Very soon, an entire 3 months had passed. During these 3 months, destructive heavenly tribulation lightning would descend from time to time. Because many of them had mastered dimensional laws, whenever they broke through a realm, there would be a tyrannical and terrifying heavenly tribulation. Then, time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, another 2 months had passed. Including the previous 3 months, the group had spent a total of 5 months refining the heavenly treasures given by Lin Tian. Their cultivation had improved tremendously, and the weakest among them had reached the alpha origin stage. As for Wu Yi, because of her amazing talent, she had reached the initial stage of the breaking desolation stage in 5 months. Awesome! The alpha origin stage! It's really a woo! The wishing crocodile could not help but howl, its eyes full of excitement. 5 months ago, it was still at the heaven stage, but now, it had reached the alpha origin stage in just 5 months. It had crossed the Xiantian stage, the sixth-dimensional realm, the silent void stage, the silent soul stage, and the seventh-dimensional realm. This made it feel both excited and happy. It's so good to have such a powerful backer! The white tiger also howled. They could reach such a stage only because of Lin Tian. Otherwise, they knew very well that it would be impossible for them to reach the profound heaven stage. It was too difficult. As a senior brother, I should have opened the way for junior brother, but now I'm enjoying junior brother's blessing. I've failed in my duty. Feng Tianzuan looked at Lin Tian now with a smile on his face. Lin Tian said modestly, Senior brother, don't say that. When I was young, it was my senior brothers who taught me how to cultivate. Feng Tianzuan smiled and waved his hand. By the way, you said you wanted to tell us something important. What is it? Hearing these words, the others involuntarily cast their gazes towards Lin Tian. They were all very curious. Facing everyone's gaze, Lin Tian nodded, and his expression became solemn. It's about the ninth dimension. He opened his mouth and told them everything about the ninth dimension and the God clan. When the group heard this, they were all shocked, including Wu Yi. God clan really exists? There's a 10th dimension above the 9th dimension. The 10 Directions ancient star is the heart of the 10th dimension. This Chapter 2457. Everyone was shocked by what Lin Tian now said. The God clan, the 10th dimension, and the true face of the 10 Directions ancient stars. It was too shocking when all of these were put together. Daddy, what should we do now? Ruo Xian asked. Work hard in your cultivation, improve your cultivation base, and become stronger, Lin Tian now said. I'll take you to the 8th dimension to train. With his current tribulation realm cultivation base, coupled with the 3-dimensional world in his body, he could roam freely in the 8th dimension. Now that he was personally taking a group of people to the 8th dimension to train, he could definitely improve their cultivation base quickly and become stronger quickly. On this day, he tore open the gate of heaven and earth from the 7th dimension to the 8th dimension and led the group directly into the 8th dimension. The Saint Spirit Qi and the Tao of heaven and earth in the 8th dimension were far from comparable to the 7th dimension. He led the group into the 8th dimension and directly stepped into some special ancient forbidden areas in the 8th dimension. This was because such places contained many natural treasures and various immortal treasures, which had an amazing effect on improving one's cultivation base. By the way, Daddy, have you seen Grandma? What does she look like? Ruo Xian was curious, her big eyes shining. After all, the goddess was her most direct blood relative, so she naturally cared about her very much. Lin Tian now chuckled and released a wisp of spiritual imprint, which depicted the goddess's appearance. Ruo Xian immediately widened her eyes. This is Grandma? She's so beautiful. Next to her, the other group was also shocked. She's actually even more. White Tiger stared. Wuxing Crocodile and Little Taichu were the same. They had always believed that Wu Yi was the most beautiful person in this world, but now they found that there was someone more beautiful than Wu Yi. An old drunkard once said that in the 9th dimension, there was only the goddess since ancient times. Was that a description of the goddess's beauty? Wuxing Crocodile thought of such a thing. Yeah. It should be, Little Taichu said in a childish voice. Lin Tian, on the other hand, didn't care too much about it. He led the group of people to a forbidden ancient land in the 8th-dimensional sky. Afterwards, along the way, a few cultivators in the 8th-dimensional heaven saw him. All of their expressions changed, and many of them began to tremble. Not long ago, Lin Tian had killed the Grand Palace Master of the Northern Zhou Palace, Duan Nuki, and the Sky Pillar Ancestor. After that, he had manifested the reincarnation wheel and revealed his identity as the Supreme of Heaven and Earth. This news had spread throughout the entire 8th dimension sky. Now, all the cultivators in the vast 8th dimension sky knew of Lin Tian's great name. How could these people not be afraid when they saw him now? Lin Tian didn't care about these cultivators. Leading the group, he didn't change his pace. A few days later, he brought the group to a crimson-red abyss filled with thick fog. The abyss was called the burial ground, and it was one of the 9 forbidden regions of the 8th-dimensional sky. It contained endless opportunities, but it was also incomparably dangerous. Even 8th-dimensional experts didn't dare to rashly step into this abyss. He didn't care about it at all as he led the group to this place. He directly led the group into the abyss. The abyss was somewhat dark, and there were many corpses on the ground. Why does this look like an 8th-dimensional expert? The White Tiger stared at a human-shaped corpse. The corpse had already festered, but it still faintly emitted a terrifying aura. Lin Tian glanced at it and said, Indeed. Currently, there was only one seal left in his soul root that hadn't been undone. Its potential was incomparably huge, and its divine sense was extremely astonishing. With just a glance, he could clearly see the true situation of this corpse. When it was still alive, it was at the middle 8th dimensional realm. It's really? An 8th dimensional expert was buried here just like that? Whooshing Crocodile's heart palpitated. It's not a big deal. Even if it's an ordinary primordial realm cultivator, I can deal with it with my current strength. Lin Tian now. The abyss covered a very large area. He led the group, and his majestic divine sense spread out, searching the entire abyss. In the abyss, wisps of mist floated, giving people a gloomy feeling. Roar! A ruthless roar rang out, and a hurricane appeared in front of them. Dense vines directly swept out from the boundless mist. These tentacles were covered in mucus and covered in lumps. They were extremely disgusting, but their power was extremely strong, as if they could penetrate everything. Moreover, the tentacles were surrounded by wisps of bloody mist, corroding the air with sizzling sounds. It seemed to be highly toxic. The end of the 8th dimensional. Did the humanoid corpse from before die because its tentacles sucked all of its G essence dry? He muttered to himself. With this thought in mind, he made his move. A 3-dimensional sword of heaven and earth condensed in his hand. 8 types of laws of the 8th dimensional interweaved, and he fiercely swung the sword. He didn't show any mercy with his sword. With unparalleled sword power, all the tentacles that were slashing toward him were shattered in the blink of an eye. Then, the sword power didn't decrease and fell in the direction of the tentacles. After a few breaths, a shrill scream rang out. The mist in the distance dispersed, and an ugly creature more than 3 feet tall revealed its appearance. Then, it exploded. Damn! One sword and... The white tiger trembled. Freak! Whooshing Crocodile muttered. All of them could sense how terrifying that hideous creature from before was. It was at the peak of the 8th dimension, and yet, it was slain by a single sword strike from Lin Tian of the Tribulation Realm. Such battle strength was simply a little too frightening. Daddy is so powerful! Ruoxian's eyes lit up. Lin Tiantan smiled and looked forward. There, at the place where the ugly beast exploded, a blood bead floated in the air. It was the size of a fist, intertwined with an extremely astonishing life aura and Taoist rhyme aura. Inner core? He was moved. In the early stage of a monster's cultivation, an inner core, also known as a beast core, would be formed in the monster's body. It was the condensation of the monster's life essence. However, this kind of inner core, generally speaking, would gradually melt as the monster became stronger and be refined into the flesh and blood origin. Therefore, under normal circumstances, monsters above the virtue realm wouldn't have an inner core. However, he didn't expect that the beast at the end of the 8th dimensional actually had an inner core in its body. A miracle! His eyes shone brightly as he raised his hand and took the inner core into his hand. The inner core of a peak 8th dimensional beast contained all the essence of the beast, so it was hard to imagine how much energy it contained. If he were to refine it alone, he would be able to reach the 8th dimensional realm in no time. If the others worked together to refine it, they could at least advance by a realm. We've made a fortune! Whooshing Crocodile, White Tiger, and the others were also surprised. They could naturally see that the inner core was extremely valuable. Let's finish searching this abyss and then go into seclusion to refine it, Lin Tiantan said. Immediately he led the group and walked to other parts of the abyss. Just like that, time passed. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. In these 7 days, he led the group and searched the entire abyss. They found many natural treasures and rare immortal items. Later, they found a Saint Spirit spring in the deepest part of the abyss. The spring water was thick and was completely formed by the liquefaction of Saint Spirit Qi. The intertwined spiritual energy was frighteningly thick. Let's cultivate in seclusion here. When they arrived, he said to the group. All the dangerous factors in the abyss had been eliminated by him. Now, there was no need to make any other arrangements. Immediately, he took out the inner core of the monster and the other natural treasures. Start, start, start! White Tiger howled excitedly. Everyone started to circulate their ancient scriptures to refine the inner core of the monster, and the other natural treasures. Lin Tian was no exception. He circulated the Reincarnation Heart Sutra, and wisps of holy light intertwined. He refined the inner core of the monster, the natural treasures, and the saint spirit's spring here. His cultivation base increased bit by bit. Just like that, time passed. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. In half a month, the heavenly tribulation struck this place from time to time, almost completely destroying this abyss. On this day, the inner core of the monster, the natural treasures, and the saint spirit's spring were all refined. The cultivation base of the group had improved tremendously. Let's go somewhere else. Lin Tian now. All the resources in this abyss had been found and refined by him. On this day, he led the group out of this abyss and headed to the other forbidden ancient regions in this world. Time passed by little by little. He led the group of people through the forbidden ancient regions in this world. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Boom! A year later. On this day, in an empty wasteland, the sky rumbled, and thunder rolled. A destructive aura came down from the sky. You guys step back, Lin Tian now said to Wu Yi and the others. In the past year, while he guided the others to cultivate, he worked hard to comprehend reincarnation and cultivate. Now, he had mastered 80% of reincarnation, and his cultivation base had stepped into the 8th dimensional realm. At this time, he attracted the 8th dimensional thunder tribulation. Boom! Thunder rolled, mighty and mighty. In the blink of an eye, the first round of thunder tribulation struck down and drowned Lin Tiandao in an instant. Lin Tiandao was not afraid. He shattered the thunder tribulation with the power of his physical body, and then summoned the reincarnation sword to transcend the tribulation together. Then, the main thunder tribulation continued, and one after another struck down. It was not until more than 10,000 of the main thunder tribulation had passed that the 8th dimensional heavenly tribulation dissipated. A rainbow-colored auspicious cloud condensed, and strands of rainbow-colored holy light fell, enveloping him. He repaired the reincarnation sword and used the rainbow-colored holy light to temper his body and consolidate his cultivation base. A quarter of an hour later, the rainbow-colored auspicious cloud dissipated, and his cultivation base really stood in the 8th dimensional realm, and it had become extremely stable. He used his divine sense to sense his body and could clearly feel his current strength. With just his combat strength alone, it was absolutely not difficult for him to kill an ordinary primordial realm expert. If combined with the 3-dimensional world, it would undoubtedly be even stronger. After the 8th dimensional realm, the primordial realm, the creation realm, the tribulation realm, the 9th dimensional realm, and the supreme of heaven and earth. He muttered to himself. And his eyes shone brightly. Once I reach the creation realm, I can unseal a complete soul root. Chapter 2458. The vast wasteland was scorched black. Lin Tian sensed his body slightly and walked toward Wu Yi and the others. He only took a simple step, but it seemed like he was traveling through space. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Wu Yi and the others. 8-dimensional realm, this cultivation speed is really frightening. Wishing Crocodile sighed and then laughed. But he, Lord Crocodile has also broken through the desolate realm. Counting, I'm not too far away from the 8-dimensional realm. Same for Lord Tiger, White Tiger said. In this year, Lin Tian led them through more than half of the forbidden area in the 8th dimension, ancient domain, and found too many heaven and earth treasures. Now, in the group, except for little Ling Jing and little Mu Chun who were still relatively young, the others had at least reached the end of the desolate realm. Wu Yi, Ruoxian, Feng Xingtianzuan, Ao Jiantianzuan, Yi Fengtian, and the others had all reached the tribulation realm. Especially Wu Yi, his cultivation had reached the middle stage of the tribulation realm, not far from Lin Tian's realm. Of course, in addition to Wu Yi's amazing aptitude and comprehension, the most important thing was that Lin Tian spent most of his time to guide and find various heaven and earth treasures. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to reach the middle stage of the tribulation realm so quickly. Dad, what are we going to do next? Are you going to the ninth dimension? Ruoxian asked. Wu Yi and the others also looked at him. Feng Xingtianzuan and the others were naturally the same. Lin Tian nodded, paused, and said, Before leaving, I will forge a peak 8-dimensional saint weapon for you all, and practice all the laws of the 8th dimension for you all. Now that his cultivation base had reached the 8th dimension and fulfilled his promise with the goddess, he was eager to ascend to the 9th dimension and see his mother, father, master, and masteress. However, before that, he still had to do his best to improve the combat strength of the group. On this day, he brought a group of people to a sacred mountain in the 8th dimensional sky. He laid down layers of barriers and carefully practiced the 8 types of laws of the 8th dimension for them. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed. 2 years later, Wu had mastered all of the 8-dimensional laws, Ruoxian had mastered 3 types of 8-dimensional laws, Feng Xingtianzuan and the rest had mastered 2 types of 8-dimensional laws, and Wu Ming, Yi Fengtian, and Violet Fairy had mastered 1 type of 8-dimensional law. As for the others, due to their lack of aptitude, they were unable to grasp any of the 8-dimensional laws in the past 2 years. However, as they watched Lin Tian demonstrate, they tried to comprehend it themselves. Although they were unable to grasp it, they still benefited from it. Their auras became more condensed, their foundations became more stable, and their cultivation base improved by quite a bit compared to 2 years ago. As expected of Little Yi, Lin Tian looked at Wu Yi and said, Wu Yi's aptitude and comprehension ability were too shocking. Perhaps, in the entire 9th dimensional sky, there were not many people who could compare to her. At present, apart from the reincarnation law and the 9 types of laws of the 9th dimensional sky, Wu Yi, like him, had mastered all of the other dimensional laws. Although she had yet to master all of them, it was still very terrifying. It's all thanks to you. Wu Yi smiled gently. If it wasn't for Lin Tian's careful demonstration and guidance, she would have been able to master all of the dimensional laws. However, the amount of time it would have taken would have been absolutely terrifying. It would have been impossible without hundreds of thousands of years. Lin Tian smiled lightly. Then, in the mountain, he took out a large pile of artifacts and refined them for them. These artifacts were obtained from the Heaven-Raising Gate and the Thousand Mountain family. Among them, there were 8-dimensional artifacts, but most of them were Tribulation Realm artifacts and lower-level artifacts. In this place, he used the reincarnation force to refine the artifacts for the group. It took him about 3 months to forge an 8-dimensional divine artifact for each of them, which contained the origin of reincarnation force. He distributed these artifacts to the group one by one, and then taught them the technique to penetrate the seal of the 9th dimensional sky. This was because many of them might ascend to the 9th dimensional sky in the future. At that time, they would need to use this special technique. That old man of yours is really abnormal. He actually sealed off an entire world by himself. It's simply... Wishing Crocodile rolled his eyes. How vast and boundless was this world? It was impossible to estimate. It was basically impossible to seal off a part of the world. However, the Heavenly Emperor accomplished such a thing, and did it alone. It was simply terrifying to the extreme. The whole family is full of perverts. White Tiger also rolled his eyes. Lin Tian chuckled softly. He had prepared many more things for the group, so that even without him by their side, they could still look down on the current 8th dimensional sky with disdain. Then, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, he bid farewell to the group and prepared to ascend to the 9th dimensional sky. Father, be careful, Ruoxian said. Safety first. Feng Xingtianzuan and Ao Jiantianzuan also said. Every time they bid farewell, their words to Lin Tian were so simple, but their feelings of concern were incomparably strong. Wu Yi's gaze was gentle. I'll come find you soon. Another 2 years passed, and she had mastered all the laws of the 8th dimensional sky. Now, she was only half a step away from peak Tribulation Realm. At most, she would need half a month to reach peak Tribulation Realm. After that, she would step into the 8th dimensional sky. Lin Tianwei was stunned, then he smiled. Okay. As he spoke, he looked at Jiyu, Bai Chiu, and the others, and said a lot of things to each of them. In the end, he solemnly bid farewell to them, and then directly tore open the heaven and earth gate that led to the 9th dimension. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared, and the gate of heaven and earth also disappeared. The 9th dimension, the land of war. Kid, take care! Wishing Crocodile, White Tiger, and the others whispered. Wu Yi and the others stared at the place where Lin Tian left without blinking. There was a faint light in their eyes. The surroundings were dark. Lin Tian entered the heaven and earth tunnel and waited quietly. After an indeterminate amount of time passed, the heaven and earth passageway suddenly stopped moving and became straight again. In the dark space, Lin Tian felt that he was in a boundless turbidity. He looked in front of him. There was an invisible chi blocking in front of him. It seemed to be an absolute fortress set up in front of a city. Very strong. This is the seal set up by Father? He muttered to himself. Pausing for a moment, he raised his hand and continuously formed a series of strange ancient seals that headed towards the seal brand in front of him. In an instant, the dim barrier in front of him distorted like ripples on water. A light flashed in his eyes. Using the samsara steps, he turned into a human-shaped lightning and rushed straight forward. In the blink of an eye, he rushed through the distorted barrier. After a flash of light, he stepped on solid ground again. In the air, the Saint Spirit Chi was so dense that it almost turned into a liquid state. There was an extremely astonishing saint aura lingering in the air, causing the pores all over his body to expand on their own. The Saint Spirit Chi and the power of the myriad Tao in the air automatically surged into his body. For a moment, he felt extremely comfortable. However, even so, his pupils shrunk slightly. Although the Saint Spirit Chi in the air was incomparably dense, looking around, there were pieces of broken land, broken saint mountains, broken divine rivers, and corpses everywhere. These scenes were truly shocking. This is the 9th dimension heaven after experiencing endless war. His eyes flickered. Over the years, his father, mother, master, and mistress had been fighting in such an environment. His eyes flickered, and then, a light flashed in them. He had ascended to the 9th dimension. His father and master were blocking the 10 ancestral gods in the 10th dimension, but his mother and mistress were still in this world. He had to find them. Where are they? He swept his gaze around, and his majestic divine consciousness spread out. He left this place to search for the goddess and the saintess of the all heavens. In the blink of an eye, he had walked very far in this world. In front of him, there was an astonishing fluctuation of saint energy. Damn it! Damn it! A group of people was fighting in front of him, or rather, it was a one-sided massacre. There were endless screams and angry voices. One group of people was dressed in very uniform, almost the same. They were incomparably ancient, and each of them had an extremely powerful saint energy surrounding their bodies. They killed the other cultivators nearby one by one. Lin Tian looked at this scene and was instantly moved. These are gods? His gaze fell on the people who were dressed in similar clothes, and his eyes immediately burst out with an extremely shocking light. In terms of appearance, they were exactly the same as humans, but there were many differences in other aspects. Some had natural ancient patterns on their faces, and some had double pupils in each eye. All of them had cold expressions, as if they were monarchs looking down on the world. Almost at the same time, a group of people discovered him 1,000 feet away, and their gazes looked straight in his direction. Clang! Without any superfluous words, one of the people's eyes flickered, and a large number of light blades swept toward Lin Tian. Wherever the light blade passed, the void would shatter, and an extremely terrifying aura would descend. Lin Tian's expression changed, and he quickly dodged. Eye technique? He looked at the person who made the move. There was a pair of pupils in each of his eyes, and they were intertwined with each other. It was mysterious and strange. At the same time, he was also shocked by the strength of this person. He felt that this person's cultivation was at the 8th dimensional realm like him, but the attack just now was definitely enough to kill an ordinary primordial realm expert. 1,000 feet away, the person who swept the light blades toward Lin Tian looked at Lin Tian with a cold gaze. Unexpectedly, Lin Tian had dodged his attack. At the same time, other people who were dressed in similar clothes to this person also looked at Lin Tian as they killed other cultivators. This mortal is quite interesting. He's only at the 8th dimensional realm, but he was able to dodge that attack just now. Logically speaking, that shouldn't be possible, one of them said indifferently. Lin Tian's eyes narrowed. This mortal? He was at the 8th dimensional realm, and these people here were also at the 8th dimensional realm, but now they were calling him a mortal? You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.